Hey guys, tonight we're unwrapping something so wild, it makes fruitcake look like a reasonable holiday dessert. The history of Christmas candy that used to contain actual, honest-to-goodness cocaine. Yes, really. The holidays are stressful, but apparently there was a time when your seasonal sugar rush might have come with a side of, why do I suddenly want to alphabetize my neighbor's woodpile at 3 a.m.? So before we set off on this high-octane sleigh ride through the weirdest corners of festive food history, take a second to like this video and subscribe. But only if you actually enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Now, dim those lights, put on a fan for that faint background hum, get yourself comfortable, maybe tuck yourself in with a blanket that doesn't contain any surprise ingredients. This is your moment to unwind and let go of modern worries like supply chain shortages and fruitcake regifting protocols. But let's pause for a moment and ask some questions that nobody ever thought they'd need answers to. Have you ever wondered what Christmas would be like if your stocking stuffers were basically a controlled substance? How did we get from humble peppermint sticks to Santa's little helpers that could outpace a telegraph? Did Victorian children really have more energy? Or were they just experiencing the world's most festive case of the jitters? If Grandma brought her famous holiday candies to a modern office party, would HR intervene before or after everyone started reciting the entire night shift schedule from memory? And seriously, at what point did someone say, you know what would really make this candy cane pop? Pharmaceutical-grade narcotics. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the late 19th century, surrounded by twinkling candlelight, questionable medical advice, and a parade of candies with ingredients that could get you banned from 3 continents today. You're wearing wool everything, your mustache is probably waxed, and there's a suspiciously enthusiastic glint in everyone's eye. Welcome to the golden age of Christmas candy. With a little something extra. Step into a Christmas parlor in 1890, where the air smells like cinnamon, pine, and the faint tang of something medicinal. You're surrounded by children spinning in circles, adults debating the merits of candied ginger, and a sweet shop display that looks innocent, until you realize some of these bonbons might double as a pharmacy run. Let's set the scene. You, in your best wool suit or dress, which, let's be honest, is itchy, warm, and only slightly less flammable than the Christmas tree, are standing in the middle of Victorian domestic bliss. The fire crackles, the clock ticks in the hallway, and everywhere you look, candy is piled high on doilies and plates, sparkling like edible jewels. There are striped candy canes stacked next to bowls of sugar plums, trays of barley sugar twists, and a suspicious little dish labeled invigorating lozenges for the cheerful home. The children are running laps around the armchairs at a velocity that suggests either extreme holiday joy or the influence of a new ingredient in the sweets. One small boy is reading a Christmas carol upside down to a deeply concerned housecat. Aunt Agnes is in the corner, waxing poetic about the restorative effects of peppermint while reaching for her third energy drop. No one seems to notice that Grandpa hasn't blinked since the pudding course. The conversation swirls as brightly as the patterns on the Christmas baubles. Adults, emboldened by the strange confidence of Victorian patent medicine, are comparing their favorite winter remedies. Did you try the new cocoa toffee? Marvelous for digestion, one declares. I do prefer the tonic jellies, another whispers. They really perk you up before the Queen's speech. The boundaries between festive fun and chemical intervention are, let's say, negotiable. You take a seat near the window, watching the snow fall outside, and help yourself to a cheerful pink sweet. Instantly, you're hit by a wave of flavors. Rosewater, lemon, and something with the unmistakable undertone of I could probably run to Scotland and back. It's not your imagination. The Victorians really did believe that a little extra kick in your candy was the height of sophistication. Why settle for plain sugar when you could have your confection fortified with a medicinal twist? The parlour's centerpiece is the sweet shop display. Glass jars filled with peppermints, candied violets, anise drops, and the star of the show, coca lozenges. No, not cocoa. Coca, as in the plant that would later be strictly controlled by law enforcement and nervous mothers everywhere. In the 1890s, though, coca was the darling of both pharmacists and candy makers, touted as the secret to a lively disposition and a clear head. At Christmas, it was as welcome as a good plum pudding. There's a gentle pressure to try one. It's the holiday spirit, plus peer pressure, plus the faint promise that you'll finally have the energy to finish darning those socks. Someone passes you a bright red candy cane, and with each lick, you wonder if this is what Santa's elves use to pull all-nighters. The adults aren't immune, either. One uncle suddenly offers to shovel the entire walk and polish the brass candlesticks. Twice. Aunt Agnes, energized by her invigorating fudge, is halfway through reorganizing the hymnals. Outside, the world is frozen and dark. But inside, the parlor hums with a warmth and nervous energy that can only come from a society that hasn't quite figured out the consequences of medicated treats. There are no labels, no warnings, just the unspoken understanding that Christmas candy is supposed to make you feel good, even if you don't know why you're now alphabetizing the wallpaper. As you watch the scene unfold, children spinning, adults debating, the family cat hiding from the sugar-fueled chaos, you realize you are smack in the middle of the golden age of Christmas candy, an era when holiday cheer came in a dozen forms, and some of them could technically be prescribed for nervous exhaustion. You might not sleep tonight, but hey, isn't that what Boxing Day is for? And just like that, the line between nostalgia and nervous energy blurs as the parlor fills with laughter, stories, and the faint hope that next year's Christmas candy will be just a little bit less exciting, but not too much less. After all, tradition is tradition. Picture yourself watching a bespectacled pharmacist in a bow tie, earnestly explaining that a pinch of coca leaf makes for a festive treat. In a world before FDA regulations and awkward class action lawsuits, the line between medicine and dessert is blurrier than your aunt's eggnog recipe. Let's really set the scene. It's a bustling city, street in 1885, and you, having narrowly avoided a pile of horse manure and a runaway penny farthing, duck into the local apothecary, lured by the promise of Yuletide cheer, now with extra invigoration. You're instantly greeted by the sharp, mingled scent of peppermint oil, alcohol, and something distinctly botanical. The pharmacist greets you with the wide-eyed confidence of a man who's convinced that his cough drops are going to save the world, or at least keep the neighbors up until New Year's. The Victorian era loved a multitasking product. If your creation could treat bronchitis, whiten teeth, and double as a Christmas dessert, you were in business. Apothecaries weren't just dispensing medicine, they were the original wellness influencers. On one shelf, you'll find jars of sugar-coated licorice root. On the next, lozenges, pastilles, and chews boasting ingredients with names that sound either faintly magical or mildly alarming. Tincture of coca, extract of cola, opium elixir, for children, of course. It's a pharmaceutical smorgasbord, and nobody's worried about microdosing yet. Candy, in this era, isn't simply for kids. It's a delivery mechanism for whatever the 19th century considers self-care. If your doctor tells you to take something for your nerves, what he really means is, go buy yourself a nice box of peppermint cocaine drops and enjoy the rest of your day alphabetizing the laundry list. It's self-medication with a sugar coating. The logic makes a strange kind of sense, at least before you read the case studies. Coca leaves, after all, have been used centuries in South America for stamina, cheerfulness, and not dying on a mountain. When European scientists first isolated cocaine, it was hailed as a miracle. It banished fatigue, cured headaches, and, crucially for the holidays, made everyone just a little bit friendlier at family gatherings. What could possibly go wrong? If a little coca leaf makes you happy, then a lot must make Christmas perfect. You can't help but marvel as the pharmacist begins whipping up his signature festive lozenges, a process that involves about 4 pounds of sugar, a few drops of wintergreen oil, and a dash of pure coca extract. He stirs with the intensity of a man chasing a patent. It really opens the lungs, he assures you. Offering a sample, it does. It opens the lungs, the sinuses, and suddenly you're rethinking your entire attitude about caroling. From here, it was a short, slippery slope from pharmacy to candy shop. Candy makers, ever the opportunists, jumped on the coca bandwagon. If the local doctor could recommend it, why shouldn't Mrs. Peabody sell it by the pound in festive paper cones? Soon, holiday markets were lined with barrels of coca caramels and tonifying chews, stocking stuffers that promised to cure everything from holiday malaise to a disappointing game of charades. And it wasn't just the Victorians. Across Europe and America, companies competed to make their sweets the most restorative. Ads boasted that their candies were recommended by 9 out of 10 doctors, mostly because the 10th was busy taking a nap after testing the product himself. Mothers handed out medicated peppermints for coughs, headaches, and general crankiness. Christmas morning became less about sleepy yawns and more about frantically building every toy train set in the house before breakfast. If you're wondering when anyone might have paused to consider the consequences, the answer is not for a while. The first real warnings didn't appear until the early 20th century, when a few brave souls noticed that maybe, just maybe, kids shouldn't be cleaning the attic at 3 in the morning with wide, unblinking eyes. By then, though, the tradition was baked in. Christmas candy as both comfort and cure, the ultimate holiday multitasker. So next time you unwrap a peppermint, spare a thought for those bygone days, when the line between treat and treatment was as thin as spun sugar, and the real holiday miracle was making it to Boxing Day with the furniture still intact. If you've ever wondered how things got so weird, blame the pharmacist. And maybe thank him too for giving us the wildest Christmas candy bowl in history. It's the era of the medicated confectioner. You're in a backroom laboratory, watching a mustachioed gentleman stir sugar, peppermint oil, and an ingredient that would land you on a watch list today. Spoiler: he has absolutely no idea about safe dosages, but he's very enthusiastic about invigorating the spirits. The air is thick with the aroma of boiling sugar, scorched peppermint, and something faintly reminiscent of a hospital waiting room. You're surrounded by jars with impressive labels: tincture of coca, oil of wintergreen, elixir of cola nut. The chemist is wearing a waistcoat and a look of pure delight, humming "God rest ye merry, gentlemen," as he dumps a scoop of what he calls stimulating essence into the bubbling vat. He's convinced this will be his greatest Christmas batch yet, and you're convinced you've just witnessed the Victorian equivalent of Breaking Bad. On the table beside him are the tools of his trade: battered copper pots, wooden paddles, and a battered notebook containing secret recipes. Each page is stained, smudged, and filled with hopeful exclamation marks and absolutely no mention of side effects. The only real safety protocol is try not to set your mustache on fire again. As he stirs, he explains, unprompted of course, that he started as a humble apothecary assistant before realizing there's far more money and infinitely more fun in selling soothing jellies to harried mothers and courage drops to nervous gentlemen than in filling prescriptions for gout. The business model is genius. If you ignore the existential risk, why sell a dull, bitter medicine when you can swirl it into a pastel ribbon of sugar and sell it by the dozen? In this world, every ailment is an opportunity. Trouble sleeping? Try a nightly lozenge with a dash of opium. Feeling sluggish? A holiday invigorator featuring coca and enough sugar to power a steamship. The possibilities are endless, and the only real question is how to market it. More medicinal or more merry? You watch as he pours the steaming syrup into a mold shaped like hollyberries, whistling with pride. In the corner, a stack of marketing leaflets awaits distribution at the local market. For robust Yuletide cheer, trust Dr. Quimby's celebrated coca candies. No claims are too bold, restores vitality, banishes melancholy, keeps children quiet, or, alternately, very, very busy. One look at the font, and you can tell this man has never met a regulation he couldn't ignore. Occasionally his wife pops in, eyeing the operation with equal parts skepticism and resignation. She's already had to explain 3 times this week why her husband's Christmas bonbons make the paying neighbor's cat yodel at the moon. He dismisses her concerns with a wave of the spatula and another enthusiastic promise that this batch will really make the holiday bright. As the candies cool, he demonstrates his process for quality control. Eat 3 in a row, declare himself refreshed, and jot down a note about possible palpitations. Who needs clinical trials when you have self-confidence and a stomach of steel? He's already planning the next batch, which he hints may include a little something from the chemist's new bottle. Very continental, very modern. It's not just one man. Across the city, dozens of medicated confectioners are hard at work, all locked in an arms race of flavor and pharmacology. Some focus on energizing chews, others specialize in tranquilizing taffies, and everyone claims their recipe is approved by doctors, at least the ones who aren't currently napping off a test sample. The holiday market is a chaotic display of color, aroma, and enthusiastic children, none of whom need a bedtime story tonight. If you're starting to suspect the candy makers are as much mad scientists as they are artisans, you're not wrong. This is the golden age of edible experimentation, where festive spirit meets pharmacology, and nobody asks too many questions. The only thing that matters is whether your batch is the talk of the Christmas table, or at least the reason no one sleeps until New Year's. So next time you reach for a piece of peppermint bark, remember the wild-eyed men in their backroom labs, chasing the perfect combination of sugar, spice, and a little something extra. And maybe thank your lucky stars that the only thing your holiday candy will give you is a sugar rush, and possibly a dental bill, not an entry in a medical journal. You wander through a bustling holiday market, where vendors peddle sweets alongside bottles labeled tonic. The most popular stall, the one where parents and children alike are lining up for healthful holiday lozenges. And everyone leaves just a little bit more animated than before. It's the tail end of the 19th century, and you're surrounded by the clamor of bells, carolers, and the kind of persistent cold that seeps straight into your socks. The Christmas market is an explosion of color and chaos. Red and green bunting, rows of flickering lanterns, and stalls piled high with glistening candies, candied fruits, and mysterious glass jars. There are barrels full of striped sticks and boxes of fruit drops as bright as stained glass. Vendors shout over the crowd, promising remedies for the winter blues and jollification for the whole family, which it turns out isn't just advertising hype. You step up to a table where the sign reads, Dr. Harcourt's Healthful Lozenges for All Ailments. Behind it, a woman in a starched bonnet dispenses sweets with the confidence of someone who's read at least 3 medical pamphlets. Her voice is brisk as she explains, "A little pick-me-up for the holidays and quite good for the chest." She hands a peppermint lozenge to a child and an amber-colored tonic chew to a weary father. The child darts off in a sugar-fueled zigzag, and Dad looks ready to shovel the entire town square. Across the way, another vendor has set up shop beneath a wreath made of dried orange peels and cinnamon sticks. His specialty: festive cordials. These aren't just candies. They're little drops of legal alchemy, each one promising to revitalize the spirit or soothe a troubled mind. The ingredients are a mystery, but there's a definite sparkle in the eye of every returning customer. He winks as he ladles out samples, whispering, "One for the road, 2 if you've got in-laws visiting." You can't help but notice that the busiest stalls are always the ones with the boldest claims. Nervous exhaustion banished, melancholy a thing of the past. The fine print, if there were any, would mention the healthy dose of cola, or other invigorating botanicals in every batch. But who has time to read labels when there are chestnuts roasting and a brass band stumbling through Good King Wenceslas at triple speed? You decide to try a Yuletide elixir drop, shaped like a tiny snowball and dusted with powdered sugar. It melts on your tongue in a blast of wintergreen, and something just a little too peppy. Suddenly, the chill doesn't bite quite as hard, and you find yourself seriously considering entering the market's competitive wreath-hanging contest, even though you have the upper body strength of a Victorian poet. Everywhere you look, people are buzzing with energy. Grandmothers haggle over marzipan with the focus of professional negotiators. Children organize impromptu races around the mulled wine barrel, and a group of teenagers is caroling at a tempo that can only be described as frantic. If you're wondering when people sleep, the answer is not tonight. Maybe not until New Year's. At the edge of the market, a stall offers evening calming pastilles for those who overdid it at the invigorating booths. The logic is perfectly Victorian. If one sweet winds you up, another one ought to wind you down. It's an endless cycle of holiday euphoria and restorative candy-induced naps. And all the while, the market pulses with the kind of collective excitement only possible when the boundaries between food, medicine, and pure fun have completely evaporated. No one's counting calories. No one's worried about sugar intake, dental bills, or ingredient lists. It's a world where Christmas cheer is measured not just in laughter and song, but in how quickly you can finish a barrel of restorative fudge and still have energy left to skate home. By the end of the night, you're full of sweets, stories, and the slightly unsettling realization that you might be able to hear colors. Still, you can't help but admire the efficiency of it all. The Victorians solved holiday exhaustion and wintertime gloom with a little ingenuity, a lot of sugar, and just enough medication to keep things lively. Maybe it wasn't exactly safe, but it was certainly memorable, and if you're lucky, you'll sleep it off just in time for the next holiday market. So next time you stroll through a modern Christmas fair, sipping your decaf cocoa and nibbling a gingerbread man, remember the old markets, where the candy had a kick and nobody ever complained about a lack of holiday spirit. It's Christmas morning, and children are tearing into stockings packed with peppermint drops, barley sugar twists, and, wait, what's this? A festive little packet labeled Coca Caramels. Congratulations, Timmy. You're about to have the most productive snowball fight of your life. The scene is pure holiday chaos, shredded wrapping paper everywhere, the tree listing slightly to one side, and the unmistakable sound of a wind-up train circling dangerously close to a mountain of candied fruit. In the corner, your little brother has already constructed a fort from empty candy boxes, and someone, probably Grandpa, has mistaken a tin of medicated lozenges for actual cough drops and is now holding court with a monologue about the virtues of modern medicine. Everyone is up early, everyone is wide-eyed, and it's not just the excitement of new toys. It's the sugar, of course, but also a bit of that secret Victorian holiday magic. Coca leaf extract, the gift that keeps on giving till someone needs a nap. This is the golden age of Christmas confections, when the boundary between treat and treatment has basically dissolved in a wave of holiday marketing. Children's stockings are a cornucopia of candied opportunities. Peppermint sticks for fresh breath, barley sugar for digestive health, and, just for the particularly lucky or slightly under the weather, Coca caramels and health lozenges straight from the apothecary counter. Victorian parents, bless them, truly believed that these treats were a win-win. It tastes good, and it's good for you, was the rallying cry. In fact, many Christmas advertisements featured glowing, rosy-cheeked children clutching candies that promised to fortify the system and banish the winter doldrums. Of course, nobody mentions that the festive energy around the parlor is now approaching the level of a squirrel convention in a coffee shop. The grown-ups are quietly grateful, though. The kids are out in the snow-building forts, rolling giant snowballs and shoveling the entire front walkway before breakfast, usually with enough energy left over to alphabetize the coal scuttle. No one is fighting. No one is sulking. Just pure, undiluted, mildly questionable joy. For the younger set, this is the best morning of the year. Timmy, armed with a handful of Coca jellies and a gleam in his eye, is leading the charge outside. Snowballs are flying at a rate that would make Santa's elves reconsider their insurance policy. Meanwhile, Sarah is halfway through assembling her new puzzle and has already rewritten the lyrics to deck the halls, to include a chorus about fizzy toffees. There's a kind of holiday euphoria that hangs in the air, fueled by a combination of sugar, narcotics, and the knowledge that chores don't exist today. Victorian marketing was unashamed in its approach. Ads in every newspaper showed smiling children next to slogans like Coca candies, for winter wellness, and let your little ones have pep. The implied message? Christmas is about more than gifts. It's about robust children who can shovel snow, recite their Latin homework, and perform a tap dance before lunch. Sure, the caramels taste a bit herbal, but that's just the flavor of health, right? The best part is, nobody feels guilty. In an era when medicine and confectionery shared the same shelf, you were practically a negligent parent not to tuck a little medicated treat in your child's stocking. If it kept colds at bay and tantrums to a minimum, it was declared a holiday miracle. Modern parents fret over gluten and food dye. Victorian parents just wanted a break from winter fevers and restless children. The solution? A peppermint drop, a barley twist, and a tiny square of invigorating caramel. Merry Christmas, everyone. Please enjoy responsibly. But as the morning chaos winds down and the snow starts to melt in everyone's boots, there's a quiet, collective crash. Children sprawl on the parlor rug, cheeks flushed, eyelids drooping, sticky wrappers in every pocket. The day was won. The snowball battles fought. And if anyone asks, it was all in the name of holiday health. Nobody ever said Victorian Christmas wasn't exciting. They just left out how much of it could be traced back to what was in the candy bowl. So if you ever feel nostalgic for a simpler time, just remember, sometimes those simple times included a side of Coca caramels and enough energy to redecorate the house before noon. Sleep well, Timmy. You've earned it. Not all candy canes are created equal. Some come straight from the apothecary, with peppermint to soothe your stomach and a secret dose of Coca extract to chase away the winter blues. Suddenly, caroling seems a lot more energetic. Let's rewind to a time before the mall Santa, before the plastic peppermint flavored everything, before anyone even considered putting artificial on a label. It's the late 1800s. And you, wrapped in 6 layers of wool and clutching a hot brick for warmth, step into your local chemist's shop, otherwise known as the Victorian CVS. The shop is crammed floor to ceiling with jars of powders, bottles of mysterious elixirs, and bins of sweets that, frankly, blur the line between dessert and controlled substance. The pharmacist, with the air of a man who's seen things and is not afraid to mix things, greets you. He's just finished bottling a fresh batch of nerve tonic and is eager to share his latest invention, the holiday peppermint stick, fortified with a dash of coca extract and sold as both a digestive aid and a guaranteed route to renewed winter cheer. In the glass case, there are regular candy canes, red and white, innocent, child-approved. And then there's the good stuff. Candy canes with the faintest medicinal tang, the ones behind the counter. The only requirement for purchase? A vague complaint about the nerves or feeling a bit down since the solstice. You make your selection. The pharmacist wraps your special stick in waxed paper, gives you a wink, and recommends a lozenge for the road, just in case your spirits need a little more brightening. Out you go, back into the chilly dusk, peppermint stick in hand, ready to take on the world, or at least the caroling route to the next parish over. A few minutes later, the magic kicks in. The peppermint is sharp, fresh, and so intense it makes your eyes water. But beneath that, there's an undeniable zing, a little buzz that's definitely not from the mint alone. Suddenly, trudging through the snow doesn't feel like a punishment. In fact, you're feeling rather optimistic about belting out "God Rest Ye Merry," gentlemen loud enough to wake the vicar. The cold doesn't sting, the night seems brighter, and you're starting to suspect the song's tempo has doubled. By the third house, the entire choir is marching double time, and little Johnny has started improvising high notes that only the neighbor's terrier can hear. Back in the warmth of the parlor, the adults are gathered for their post-caroling digestives. There's sherry for the traditionalists and, for the more adventurous, a bowl of peppermint tonics. Fancy talk for peppermint sticks dipped in something that's definitely not approved by the modern FDA. Aunt Millie swears it keeps her cold at bay. Uncle George claims it helps his gout, though he's never had gout. And everyone, from the kids to the grandmother with the suspiciously full flask, agrees. The holidays just feel more cheerful with a peppermint stick from the apothecary. The Victorian genius of it all is how completely normal this seems. Want to soothe a cough? Have a peppermint stick. Tummy ache after too much plum pudding? Try a digestive drop. Feeling the midwinter doldrums? Here's something pepperminty, and just a tad invigorating, to perk you right up. The fact that it might also leave you reorganizing the woodpile at midnight is, apparently, a feature, not a bug. The marketing, too, is a work of art. Newspaper ads depict cheerful families gathered around a tin of Dr. Lively's Merry Mint Sticks, recommended by physicians for relief from nervous fatigue and winter melancholy. Even Santa gets in on the action, depicted in illustrations with a peppermint stick tucked in his belt, eyes wide with what we now know was not just holiday joy. If anyone notices that the family dog is still chasing its tail an hour later, nobody's complaining. This is the Victorian solution to seasonal affective disorder. Part holiday cheer, part pharmacy, all completely legal. So, next time you savor a plain old peppermint stick, remember, it's a distant, tamer cousin to the original medicated holiday treat. You might not suddenly find yourself leading a flash mob carol in the town square, but at least you can enjoy your candy cane without having to explain yourself to a pharmacist or a local constable. The energy boost? That's just the sugar. The rest is history. The Victorian family that doses together stays together, at least until the sugar crash. Aunt Mildred's famous Christmas taffy has a secret ingredient, and nobody questions why Uncle Harold is fixing the roof at midnight. Let's pull back the lace curtains and settle in for a festive gathering that feels equal parts holiday special and low-stakes science experiment. It's Christmas Eve, the parlor is warm and flickering with candlelight, and the table is groaning under the weight of cakes, puddings, cookies, and at least 4 types of candy, all fortified. In the language of the era, which is a polite way of saying that dessert could double as a home remedy, or at very least, a pretext for painting the pantry. At 2 a.m., around the hearth, the children are elbow-deep in paper chains and tinsel. Their sticky hands a telltale sign that they've sampled more than a few energy drops. The adults, unconcerned by any concept resembling moderation, have graduated from sherry to Dr. Crandall's festive fudge, a family favorite that promises uplifted spirits and a buoyant heart. The fudge also promises a jittery game of charades, and at least one attempted waltz by someone who hasn't waltzed since the Crimean War. Meanwhile, Aunt Mildred holds court in the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour and an assortment of questionable substances. She stirs a cauldron of taffy with the focus of a seasoned alchemist, muttering about the importance of timing and the right medicinal enhancements. Her secret? A healthy dash of coca extract, a trick she swears by for keeping everyone bright-eyed and merry well into the new year. Just enough for a sparkle, she says with a wink. By now, everyone knows the family's Christmas taffy is more than just a sweet treat. It's a guaranteed ticket to a sleepless night and a mysteriously productive Boxing Day. Uncle Harold, who's only marginally aware of his own limits, is buzzing around the house like a man on a mission. He's already repaired a fence post, reorganized the silverware, and is now, inexplicably, attempting to patch the roof. In December, in the dark. If you want something done, do it yourself, he proclaims, balancing on a ladder with a peppermint twist in one hand and a hammer in the other. The neighbors are too busy cleaning their own windows at midnight to complain. It's just another Christmas in a household where energy is never in short supply, thanks to Aunt Mildred's kitchen chemistry. Not to be outdone, the family dog has managed to sample a dropped stimulating fudge and is currently staging an enthusiastic solo lap around the garden. Even the cat, usually above this sort of nonsense, is eyeing the dessert tray with suspicious interest. The whole house thrums with a nervous energy that's hard to attribute solely to the season of goodwill. As the evening stretches on, the parlor becomes a laboratory for what could generously be called festive innovation. Cousin Percy proposes a foot race up and down the stairs. Grandmother is knitting at a pace that threatens the structural integrity of the scarf. The children, unsupervised and emboldened by invigorating barley sugar, have devised a new game involving tiddlywinks, marbles, and questionable physics. No one is worried about bedtime. Bedtime is a myth, at least until the sugar and other ingredients finally wear off, leaving everyone to collapse in a heap of paper crowns and peppermint wrappers. Victorian families weren't just celebrating, they were experimenting, sometimes deliberately, sometimes by accident. A new recipe, a new tonic, a little extra winter medicine in the icing. The logic was simple. If it keeps the children healthy, the adults busy, and the grandparents feeling young, then it's the spirit of the season. Nobody worried about ingredient lists or the possibility of side effects. It was all part of the fun, the risk, the living history of holiday cheer that bordered on the genuinely chaotic. So next time your relatives get a little too enthusiastic at Christmas dinner, remember, you could be part of a long tradition of chemical experiments disguised as dessert. In the Victorian era, a lively family was a happy family, even if it took a little extra holiday magic to get there. You're flipping through a period newspaper, greeted by festive ads with wide-eyed children and captions like Coca Sweets for Vitality. Every product promises a brighter, brisker Christmas, though the fine print is suspiciously absent. Let's linger. 4. A moment on the Victorian morning ritual. Breakfast, a strong cup of tea, and the daily paper. Its pages bursting with optimism, ink smudges, and, above all, holiday advertisements. Each one is a festive fever dream. Smiling families pose beside oversized candy canes. Mothers beam approvingly at cherubic children, and every other headline is a promise. Give your child the gift of pep this Christmas, or start the day right. With lively lozenges, you can almost smell the peppermint and unregulated bravado. One ad depicts a pair of pink-cheeked youngsters ice skating under the headline, "Stamina in every sweet." The copy encourages parents to tuck a handful of Dr. Joy's Coca Drops into every stocking. And if you believe the artwork, the side effects include perfect posture and Olympic-level coordination. The small print? Non-existent. The largest warning you'll find is caution. May cause excess festivity, as if the only risk is singing too many verses of Deck the Halls. The candy industry of the late 19th century was a lawless, sugar-fueled wilderness, and their marketing teams had the creativity and plausible deniability to match. The best-selling products were those that walked the line between delicious and medicinal. After all, why sell a plain old peppermint stick when you can claim it restores winter energy or banishes holiday gloom? According to the ads, these candies could cure everything from common colds to cranky attitudes, usually with a cheery Santa waving from the corner. But it's not just the kids in these illustrations who are beaming. Fathers clutch tins of Gentleman's Fortifying Fudge that claim to improve resolve and regularity. Grandmothers are shown passing invigorating pastilles to the next generation, presumably to keep family game night from devolving into a nap. Somewhere, always, there's a reassuring recommended by physicians blurb, as if the local barber who moonlights as the town doctor has just signed off on your holiday binge. No one seems remotely worried about what's in the candy. The ingredients are described with vague, confident words: botanicals, herbal extracts, nature's tonic, all of which sound very official until you realize that nature's tonic, in this case, might be just a little too invigorating for the average 7-year-old. There's a charming absence of oversight, a Wild West atmosphere where every new confection is a miracle and every holiday ad a miniature work of science fiction. Occasionally you'll spot an ad so unintentionally ominous it could be a meme. A child's best friend. Coca Caramels, reads one. Another features a baby in a bonnet holding a restorative lollipop with a look that can only be described as caffeinated surprise. Be the envy of the neighborhood, the ad urges, with children as bright as a Christmas star. You can't help but wonder if bright is really just code for climbing the walls. Holiday advertising in this era was as much about social pressure as it was about the product itself. Were your kids sluggish? Was your house too quiet? Was your Christmas not quite jolly enough? The solution was always the same. More sweets, more medicine, more pep. If your neighbor's family was celebrating with medicated taffy and you weren't, what did that say about your commitment to seasonal cheer? In Victorian England, FOMO started with a peppermint drop. Of course, looking back, it's hard not to wince at the innocent confidence of these ads. The earnest promises, the wild-eyed children, the total absence of disclaimers, side effects, or even a hint that you might be giving your child a controlled substance with their Christmas breakfast. But there's also a certain charm in the optimism, the belief that a sweet treat could solve every problem, that a brighter Christmas was only one Coca sweet away. So next time you see a modern commercial for sugar-free gum or vitamin C gummies, remember, we've come a long way from the days when restorative confections ruled the holiday season, but somewhere in the fine print of history, there's a lesson. Advertising ages about as well as a Christmas fruitcake, and sometimes with even stranger ingredients. In the doctor's office, your cough is met with a recommendation for soothing syrup, best enjoyed in lozenge form. It just so happens these lozenges are also available in a festive peppermint flavor. Bed rest is out. Candy is in. Let's set the stage. It's December, and you're shivering in the waiting room of your local Victorian doctor's practice. The air is heavy with coal dust and the faint scent of camphor, and the only magazines on the table are last year's seed catalogues. But you're not here for magazines. You're here for a cure. After all, you've come down with a winter cough, or what the Victorians call the chills, the nerves, or just the usual holiday malaise. The doctor appears, mutton chopped and cheerful, and he listens to your chest for approximately 2 seconds before prescribing what every respectable medical professional in 1890 prescribes this time of year: lozenges. Not just any lozenges, peppermint, menthol, and, in a hushed tone, the kind with just a touch of invigorating extract. The miracle of Victorian medicine is that it tastes an awful lot like candy. You walk out of the office with a waxed paper bag of sweets so festive, you'd swear they belong in a stocking, not a medicine cabinet. The local chemist, never one to miss a sales opportunity, displays rows of Dr. Jolly's holiday lozenges and Yuletide cough pastilles, all boasting health benefits that blur the line between medical treatment and straight-up confectionery. Bed rest, the doctor insists, is old-fashioned. There's work to be done, carols to be sung, and Christmas geese to be roasted. Why waste precious days in bed when modern science has provided a delicious workaround? These lozenges promise to clear your sinuses, lift your spirits, and possibly allow you to redecorate the parlor before breakfast. At the very least, you'll be able to out-carol the competition and survive another round of charades with your in-laws. The ingredient lists on these medicinal candies are always fascinating. Part legitimate, part fantasy. Peppermint, for sure. A little eucalyptus, maybe. But tucked between the sugar and the herbal extracts, there's often a wink to something fortifying. A little coca here, a dash of opium there, for those extra tenacious coughs. If you ask for clarification, the pharmacist will tell you not to worry. It's the holidays after all, and everyone deserves to feel their best. Children, of course, are not left out. For them, there are junior cheer drops, which look suspiciously like the regular adult ones, only smaller and shaped like Santa Claus. Advertisements for these products feature smiling, impossibly energetic children bounding through snowdrifts, their cheeks glowing and their dear mothers beaming with relief. The fine print doesn't exist. Instead, there's just a hearty recommendation to take 2 and enjoy the festivities. If you end up alphabetizing the hymnals or organizing the pantry at 2 a.m., so much the better. The best part? You don't need a prescription. Every sweet shop and apothecary in town is more than happy to fill your order. Some enterprising families even skip the doctor altogether, heading straight for the medicinal jars and picking out a mix of cough drops, barley sugar twists, and invigorating bonbons to see them through the winter. The local doctor, meanwhile, is probably at home with a tin of his own supply, humming God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen at twice the usual tempo. In a world without antibiotics, where a bad cough could keep you home for weeks, or worse, These miracle lozenges are a lifeline. They make you feel good, or at least they make you feel good enough to keep going. The line between medicine and morale booster has never been thinner. Plus, it's hard to feel sorry for yourself when your cough syrup is peppermint flavored and comes wrapped like a Christmas treat. Of course, not everyone is convinced. There are whispers, especially from the older generation, about the old ways, mustard plasters, warm gin, or just toughing it out. But the younger crowd isn't interested in suffering. They want relief, and they want it now, preferably in a flavor that matches the season. So, as you suck on your holiday lozenge and prepare to face another round of Victorian winter, remember, in this era, medicine is sweet, doctors are jolly, and the only real prescription is to keep calm, carry on, and never say no to candy. At least until January, when the bills and the sugar crash finally arrive. Santa's sack is loaded with peppermint twists, marzipan, and according to the catalogue, invigorating cordials for the whole family. His cheeks are rosy, his eyes are bright, and you're starting to suspect he's on something stronger than holiday spirit. Let's set the record straight. Victorian Santa is not your modern, mall-dwelling, cookie-munching, maybe I'll just bring a puzzle this year kind of guy. This Santa is a one-man distribution network for the weirdest winter wellness concoctions ever approved by absolutely no one in public health. He's a jolly, red-suited enigma, cheerfully making his rounds, leaving sugar plums, sweets, and a variety of health tonics tucked discreetly between the oranges and the nuts. If you grew up in this era, it's entirely possible your stocking contained more experimental medicine than the average 20th century pharmacy. As you watch him at work, spinning through frosted parlors and snow-dusted bedrooms, you start to notice some oddities. He moves with a suspicious amount of zip for a man his size, and there's a gleam in his eye that hints he's tried one too many festive fudge cubes, now with extra zing. Even the reindeer are looking a little over-caffeinated. Maybe it's the peppermint, maybe it's the coca extract, maybe it's just the sheer adrenaline of squeezing down 400 chimneys in one night. But let's be honest. The North Pole was probably more laboratory than toy workshop, an R&D facility for the cheeriest and most highly fortified treats on the market. Flip open any 19th century Christmas catalogue and you'll find Santa advertising a truly wild selection. Cordial drops for vigorous youth, electric marzipan, Dr. Nickleby's invigorating jellies for young and old. Everyone is endorsed by leading medical authorities and recommended for holiday nervousness, festive exhaustion, and post-caroling malaise. Want a white Christmas? Start with the Alpine Invigoration tablets, guaranteed to put a glow in your cheeks and a song in your heart, whether you're 5 or 95. Santa's only warning: don't mix the jolly ginger fudge with the energetic walnut clusters unless you plan to reorganize your attic before sunrise. For the grown-ups, there's no shortage of adult options. Victorian advertising is full of winks and nods to fortified cordials, special reserve peppermint, and Christmas cheer for the tired householder. Santa's sack isn't just for the kids. He's got Auntie Ethel's favorite soothing drops, guaranteed to make family dinner less painful, and something labeled Winter Courage Elixir for Uncle Bertie's annual attempt at sledding down Deadman's Hill. Santa's distribution strategy is pure genius. Make the treats sweet enough for the kids and potent enough for the adults, and everyone will believe in holiday miracles, at least until the effects wear off. Imagine the Christmas morning chaos. Sugar-fueled children, suspiciously chipper parents, and a cat who's accidentally nibbled on a marzipan ball and is now experiencing a religious awakening. Santa's influence is everywhere, and his treats are the unspoken MVP of the holiday. Nobody questions. why Timmy is shoveling the driveway in record time, or why Grandma is leading the family in calisthenics. It must be the fresh air, someone says, as if the secret to eternal youth is just brisk December winds, and not the invigorating candies disappearing by the handful. But Santa's real superpower isn't just distributing presents, it's selling the idea that every worry, ache, or winter frown can be solved with a healthful confection. The line between magic and medicine is non-existent. Santa isn't just the patron saint of giving, he's the Victorian answer to the family pharmacist, dropping off remedies that taste suspiciously like dessert. No prescription necessary, just good cheer and a slightly concerning tolerance for untested ingredients. As the night winds down and Santa vanishes into the snowy distance, the parlor hums with manic energy and the comforting rustle of wrappers. You start to realize the true meaning of holiday spirit. Spoiler: it's mostly sugar, a pinch of coca, and the optimistic hope that nobody asks too many questions about what was actually in that cordial. So next time you see Santa's rosy cheeks and twinkling eyes, just remember, he wasn't just delivering toys. He was making sure Christmas was the liveliest, zippiest, most wide-awake morning of the year. And if you feel inspired to jog a mile or alphabetize the pantry before dawn, maybe thank old Saint Nick and keep the secret between us. Meet the entrepreneurs who made a fortune blending medical trends with sweet tooth cravings. Their secret to success? Marketing sugar as medicine and medicine as a treat. Just don't ask them for the ingredient list. Let's picture you at the grand opening of Higgins Medicinal Sweets Emporium, the kind of establishment that pops up whenever two lucrative trends collide. The door jingles, and you're greeted by the imposing visage of Mr. Higgins himself, a man with the confidence of a snake oil salesman and the mustache of a man who spent a lifetime sniffing sugar dust. He waves you inside, past pyramids of colorfully wrapped candies, each one boasting miraculous claims that make your local pharmacist look lazy. Mr. Higgins isn't your average candy man. He's part chemist, part marketer, part Victorian wellness guru. His walls are lined with certificates awarded for public service in sore throat prevention 1891, tea, glowing testimonials, and about a dozen newfangled machines that promise to blend, boil, and bottle joy in every shape imaginable. On his desk, stacks of ledgers share space with jars labeled Elixir of Pep, Confectioner's Compound, and Winter Vigor Drops. You're not sure if you've stepped into a sweet shop or a very optimistic laboratory. But the real secret to his success isn't just the candy or even the medicinal twist. It's the marketing genius of making people believe that indulgence is healthy and medicine is a treat. You want your children to feel better? Give them soothing syrup chews. Suffering from the winter blues? Why, nothing brightens the spirit like energizing caramel nuggets, now with added cola extract. Don't let the fear of illness or the monotony of long nights bring you down. Just self-medicate with a handful of barley sugar, fortified with whatever new, invigorating botanical has hit the market this season. The confectionery tycoon knows exactly how to read the room. He courts local doctors with gift boxes of cough drops, slips a little cash to the town paperboy to spread the word, and organizes public tastings at church bazaars where everyone leaves just a little more animated than before. It's a perfect storm of timing and opportunism. The rise of urban life, the spread of modern advertising, and the Victorian obsession with both progress and propriety. Who wouldn't want their moral fiber shored up with a dose of patent medicine fudge? The competition is fierce, but the biggest names in the game all follow the same formula, sometimes literally. Recipes are borrowed, improved, and closely guarded. Trade secrets are as valuable as gold, and employees are sworn to secrecy or, at very least, bribed with a lifetime supply of Fortitude fruit pastilles. In the boardrooms of the biggest sweet companies, men in waistcoats debate branding, packaging, and the precise language needed to skirt the attention of anyone who might be inclined to ask awkward questions about side effects. And it's not just the adults who are targeted. Clever entrepreneurs realize that the future belongs to those who win over both parents and children. New lines of sweets arrive in dazzling tins, decorated with dancing elves, skipping children, and, most importantly, the proud endorsement of fictional Dr. Merriweather. Each product promises health, happiness, and a dose of the holiday spirit, all for the price of a penny. Over time, fortunes are made and lost. A few tycoons go down in flames when regulators finally catch on, but many retire wealthy, having successfully convinced an entire generation that good health can be wrapped up in striped paper and handed out on Christmas morning. Their legacy, a culture where sweets are both comfort food and a quick fix, where just one more is basically doctor's orders. So next time you're handed a tin of festive lozenges, spare a thought for the tycoons of Christmas past. The bold, brilliant, occasionally reckless souls who turned the holiday treat into a medical marvel and made a mint, sometimes literally, in the process. In the grand tradition of Victorian commerce, they proved that nothing sells quite like hope, sugar, and a little something extra. The family gathers around the tree, buzzing with excitement, and possibly more. Even Grandma's fudge has a little pick-me-up in it this year. The only thing missing? A warning label. Let's slip into a Victorian holiday living room, where the wallpaper is red velvet, the fire is roaring, and every surface is covered in a generous dusting of powdered sugar and possibly something extra. The air smells like oranges, spice, pine, and a faint medicinal tang that hints someone's been into the fortified treats again. Presents pile up beneath the tree, and you're just in time for the morning's main event. The great family unwrapping, fueled by tradition, anticipation, and a collection of candies so stimulating that even the dog is looking a little over-caffeinated. Mom, usually the voice of moderation, is standing in the kitchen door with a tray of peppermint bark and a smile that borders on manic. Just one more piece before breakfast, she says, as if that's a normal suggestion. Dad, meanwhile, is trying to assemble a toy locomotive at a speed that makes you suspect he's had more than a few holiday vitality lozenges. Every few minutes, he pauses to sing along with the carols on the phonograph, only to forget the lyrics and switch to whistling with impressive volume. The children, of course, are beyond saving. With their stockings emptied, their mouths are full of cola drops, barley sugar twists, and the mysterious coca caramels that came in the biggest, most festive tin. Little Tommy is already halfway through constructing a miniature fort out of fudge, and his sister Clara is setting up a makeshift puppet show, the plot of which becomes increasingly surreal with every passing minute. You suspect the puppets are also experiencing the effects of Victorian Christmas cheer. Even Grandma, who has always sworn by the old ways, is caught up in the moment. Her fudge, she insists, just helps keep the chill away. She offers you a slice, and you notice her eyes are brighter than usual, her knitting needles flying as she whips up a scarf at a pace that would challenge an industrial loom. I put a little something extra in the recipe this year, she confides. You're not sure if you should be worried or grateful. As the morning progresses, the energy in the room rises to a fever pitch. Dad's already cleaned the fireplace, rearranged the bookshelf, and started polishing the family silver, all before breakfast. Mom, undeterred, organizes the children into a caroling squad, who march around the neighborhood at a tempo that leaves half the town in awe, and the other half desperately searching for earplugs. Even the family cat gets involved, chased up and down the stairs by a toddler wielding a peppermint stick like a baton. If you step back and look around, what you're witnessing is a perfectly normal Victorian holiday. A grand experiment in collective energy management. The house hums with the kind of electric anticipation that only happens when every treat doubles as a pick-me-up. There are no quiet corners, no slow mornings, just a household synchronized on a sugar high, lightly seasoned with whatever tonic happened to be in the latest batch of Christmas candy. Of course, no one thinks to question what's actually in the treats. Ingredient labels are for the weak, and besides, everything is recommended by doctors or favored by athletes. The only real warning is the one passed down by experience. Don't eat too much fudge if you value your afternoon nap. Otherwise, all bets are off. As the sugar rush peaks, the family finds increasingly creative ways to spend their energy. Spontaneous dance parties break out in the parlor. Someone starts a snowball fight in the garden, using decorative pomanders as ammunition. The older kids build an elaborate train track that runs from the kitchen to the upstairs landing. And at one point, Grandpa decides it's the perfect moment to recount every Christmas from his childhood, speaking at twice his usual speed. Eventually, of course, the inevitable crash arrives. One by one, the family drifts off into a blissful, fudge-induced nap, scattered across couches and armchairs like casualties of holiday cheer. The quiet is sudden and complete, broken only by the gentle snores of Grandma and the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock. So next time you find yourself overwhelmed by the energy at your own family Christmas, just remember, it's all part of a time-honored tradition. The great Christmas sugar high might not come with a warning label, but it's one holiday side effect that keeps the season bright and everyone just a little bit weird. Not every candy story ends with a smile. Somewhere between the peppermint bark and the Turkish delight, someone is feeling a little too peppy. The phrase "too much holiday spirit" takes on a whole new meaning. Let's take a moment to peer under the shimmering surface of Victorian Christmas, where the bonbon box is as much a grab bag of risk as it is a festive centerpiece. Picture it: a snowy morning, the parlor, a riot of wrapping paper, and a generous bowl of assorted sweets glinting invitingly on the sideboard. But this isn't your modern, all-natural, allergy-labeled selection. This is an adventure, a roulette wheel of flavor, texture, and, occasionally, minor medical emergencies. The trouble begins innocently enough. Cousin Alice, known for her sweet tooth and her ironclad optimism, helps herself to a generous handful of bonbons before breakfast. She's barely finished her third invigorating marzipan ball when the symptoms begin. She's not just bouncing with excitement, she's practically vibrating. Her parents exchange nervous glances as Alice volunteers to shovel the entire street and alphabetize the hymnals. At first, it seems like the best Christmas gift ever, until she starts reciting Family Tree backwards and can't stop giggling. Meanwhile, Uncle Victor, never one to pass up a bargain, is sampling restorative Turkish delight, a confection allegedly imported from Constantinople, but most likely concocted in the back room of the local chemist. He insists it's quite bracing, even as he starts rearranging the parlor furniture, with the zeal of a man twice his age and half his sense. The family's delighted until they realize the Christmas goose is now roasting atop the piano. Across the room, the youngest members of the family have discovered a mysterious tin labeled Dr. Tiddleton's Healthful Jellies. These aren't just jellies. They're a Victorian experiment in edible chemistry, each one fortified with a little something extra. The result? A new record for laps around the dining table, followed by a spirited but ultimately disastrous attempt at indoor tobogganing, using the hall runner and Grandma's best candlesticks. The adults, of course, are not immune. Aunt Ethel, feeling the strain of hosting, sneaks an extra calming cordial lozenge, hoping for a moment of peace. Instead, she's soon organizing a caroling group with military precision, dividing the family into sopranos, altos, and people who can't carry a tune but will try anyway. By mid-morning, the dog is wearing a wreath, and everyone has memorized all 12 verses of Good King Wenceslas. For better or worse. It's only when the excitement reaches its fever pitch that the drawbacks of unregulated Christmas cheer become clear. Alice, having finished shoveling the neighbor's walkway, suddenly decides she needs a nap. In the coal bin, Uncle Victor, unable to find the piano, it's in the hallway, under a pile of cushions, sits quietly in the corner, staring into space and muttering about the virtues of lemon drops. The children, after their sugar-fueled marathon, collapse in a heap, their sticky faces pressed into the rug. And then comes the other side of Victorian ingenuity, the remedies. Out come the soothing pastilles and gentle tonic drops, all claiming to calm the nerves and settle the stomach. Whether these actually work or are just an excuse to eat more candy is anyone's guess. The cycle continues, up, down, sideways, until the household is equal parts exhausted and thoroughly entertained. The bonbon box was never just about treats. It was a microcosm of the era, innovation, optimism, and more than a little risk. There were no safety regulations, no ingredient labels, no allergy warnings, just the hope that the next sweet would be the best one yet, and that any side effects could be managed with a brisk walk or a quiet lie down. So next time you reach for a peppermint or a piece of fudge, give a nod to the brave souls of Christmas past, who risked everything for the fleeting thrill of a sweet treat. Sometimes, the greatest dangers come wrapped in the prettiest packages. And sometimes, just sometimes, too much holiday spirit is exactly what makes the memory last. In a world without clear labeling laws, the line between a sweet shop and a pharmacy is as thin as a candy cane. Shoppers pop in for a bag of barley sugar and leave with a mood elevator they didn't know they needed. Let's stroll down a bustling Victorian street, boots crunching on frost, breath clouding the shop windows. You pass a bakery, a milliner, and then your destination, a little corner shop with a striped awning and golden letters spelling out Wiggins and Sons, confectioners and chemists. Step inside, and the warm air hits you like a festive punch. It's part peppermint, part camphor, part something unidentifiable that tingles your nose and makes your eyelids twitch. Everywhere you look, jars overflow with boiled sweets and gumdrops, tins of lozenges, barrels of licorice, and little paper packets stamped with seals that say things like "guaranteed to soothe" or "for winter gloom." Behind the counter, Mr. Wiggins himself is ready to help with all your holiday needs. He can recommend barley sugar for a sore throat, licorice sticks for a cough, and if you're feeling a touch of the nerves, well, there's always the reviving mint chews, with an ingredient list that reads like a who's who of unregulated stimulants. No prescription required. Just a trusting look and a story about being run down by the season. But here's where it gets interesting. Nobody blinks at the overlap between candy and cure. In the absence of modern regulations, every shop is a pharmacy, and every pharmacist is part Willy Wonka, part amateur doctor. The logic is simple. If it tastes good and makes you feel better, who cares if you can't pronounce what's in it? One side of the shop offers marzipan pigs and Turkish delight, while the other side sells digestive powders and calming pastilles. In the middle, a proud sign proclaims Christmas cheer for all ages, now with extra vitality. Parents don't think twice about filling a child's stocking with restorative fudge or invigorating lemon drops. After all, these are doctor-approved, which, in the Victorian era means at least one doctor, somewhere, tried one and didn't immediately keel over. Customers chat with the shopkeeper about which candies are best for spirits and which ones will keep you sharp at the office party. If you're especially bold, you might request a special private blend behind the counter, discreetly wrapped and paid for in cash. The less said, the better. Kids love it, of course. A trip to the sweet shop is also a chance to hear about the wonders of modern science. Did you know these barley sugars have cola nut in them? The shopkeeper says, winking. Keeps the mind alert for holiday mischief. The children, wide-eyed, nod solemnly and dream of candy-powered snowball fights. Meanwhile, their parents pick up a little something for Grandma's aches, which just happens to be wrapped in festive foil and tastes like spicy caramel. Sometimes the blurred line is accidental. Sometimes it's entirely on purpose. A family buys a tin of soothing chest pastilles for cold relief, only to realize after 3 servings that Grandma has started composing symphonies on the piano and the family cat is chasing its own tail. No one files a complaint. Instead, it becomes another story to tell at Christmases for years to come. The year Grandpa accidentally ate half a jar of peppermint mood tablets and recited every poem he knew before dawn. The true beauty of the blurred line is that it made the holiday brighter, if a little riskier. There's a sense of trust, a dash of bravado, and the unwavering faith that a good sweet could cure almost anything. Sore throat? Sadness? Too much work? And too little cheer? Just pop by Wiggins & Sons, grab a scoop of Christmas revivers, and prepare for a night you won't soon forget. So the next time you walk by a pharmacy's candy aisle and wonder if cough drops should really taste like watermelon, remember, there was a time when every candy was also a cure. And every cure was a little bit candy. And if you left the shop feeling unexpectedly cheerful, well, you weren't alone. The holiday peddlers are out in force, selling miracle candies guaranteed to cure everything from headaches to heartbreak. If you believe the marketing, these sweets might also make you better at ice skating, knitting, and public speaking. Step out into the frosty glow of a Victorian city square, and you'll find a scene straight out of a storybook, or possibly an early episode of Shark Tank. Under strings of gas lamps and paper lanterns, a motley parade of vendors shouts from behind booths decked in pine garlands and optimistic bunting. Every second stall features a salesman in a tall hat, moustache waxed to a dangerous point, extolling the wonders of his signature medicated confections. If you've ever wondered who invented the concept of multitasking, it was probably one of these fellows, waving tins of nerve nibbles in one hand and lively lozenges in the other. Here's how the hustle works. The crowd gathers, half freezing, half curious, drawn in by promises that make modern infomercials look humble. One moment you're handed a sugar plum for winter sniffles. The next, you're told it will also help you remember your cousin's birthday, mend family feuds, and finish your embroidery in half the time. The claims are as endless as the supply. Why, madam, the peddler proclaims, this licorice drop has been known to steady the hands of the shakiest knitter and grant the courage to sing a solo at Christmas Mass. The crowd oohs appreciatively, and a few daring souls step forward, coins outstretched. Behind the scenes, the recipes are as variable as the claims. One vendor's miracle caramel contains cola nut, coca leaf, a pinch of cayenne, and enough sugar to keep you awake until 12th night. Another touts his soothing jellies, which, according to the fine print that doesn't exist, include a medicinal dose of something that would later be classified as a controlled substance. The salesmen are equal parts entertainers and alchemists, tossing samples to children and convincing stern grandmothers to try a restorative gumdrop. There are demonstrations, testimonials, and the occasional fake coughing fit cured miraculously on the spot. Not to be outdone, Some peddlers lean hard into the performance. A particularly dramatic salesman brandishes a peppermint stick, declaiming, "Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears, for I have a candy that will conquer not only winter's chill but also your most persistent in-laws." The crowd laughs, but not one person puts their sample down. Who wouldn't want a confection that promises to solve family disputes and clear up your complexion? And there's a competitive aspect, too. Each vendor claims their creation is the original, the only, the most doctor-approved. Slogans fly through the air, favored by royals, endorsed by explorers, as featured in the Illustrated Christmas Weekly. Rival salesmen occasionally exchange barbs about the efficacy of each other's miracle fudge, all in good holiday fun, and sometimes not so fun, especially when one restorative toffee is accused of being little more than boiled syrup and a prayer. Of course, the peddlers know their audience. Everyone's tired, everyone's cold, and everyone is susceptible to the idea that maybe, just maybe, a sweet treat can make things a little easier. Parents snap up calming drops for fractious children, or uncles discreetly pocket festive fortitude bonbons. By the end of the night, even the most skeptical in the crowd are munching on elation lozenges. Just in case. It's only later, tucked into bed and listening to the echoes of the city square, that you might question whether you really did knit 3 scarves in record time, or if the only thing the miracle candy cured was your common sense. But honestly, who's complaining? For a few shining hours, you felt lighter, brighter, and just a little bit magical. So next time someone promises you a miracle in a wrapper, remember the snake oil salesmen of Christmas past, their claims outrageous, their sweets addictive, and their true gift: the ability to make even the coldest night sparkle, with the promise of something wonderful or at least interesting enough to talk about until spring. Between the roaring fires, the relentless cheer, and the suspiciously lively carolers, you begin to wonder, was Victorian Christmas always this intense? Or is it just the candy talking? Let's step into the parlours and streets of a Victorian December, where the festive season is less about relaxing and more about surviving a marathon with extra tinsel. The air is thick with the scents of pine, spiced wine, burning coal, and, inevitably, peppermint. You arrive at your relative's house, bundled up in layers that defy both logic and gravity, ready for what you imagine will be a cozy evening. Instead, you are met with a whirlwind of energy. Part tradition, part sugar high, part, well, who knows what's in those revitalizing sweets. It starts with breakfast. Forget quiet cups of tea and gentle conversation. Victorian breakfast on Christmas Day is a barrage of plum pudding, barley sugar, and restorative drops that promise to banish fatigue and invigorate the soul. The children are already charging around the sitting room, unwrapping gifts and inventing new uses for the decorative ribbons. Meanwhile, your aunt is plotting out the entire day's activities with military precision: games, feasting, caroling, more games, and a dance or two if time allows. You suspect she's running on at least 3 holiday invigoration lozenges and a worrying amount of enthusiasm. By midday, the house is in full swing. The roaring fire should be comforting, but the room is so packed with people, pets, and the occasional neighbor who just popped by that you feel more like you're attending a festive rugby scrum. Everyone is either singing, eating, or arguing about who hid the gingerbread tin. Someone is always standing in the doorway, ushering more guests inside, each one clutching a tray of medicated fudge, or cheering cordials, and a wide, slightly manic smile. Then come the carolers. They don't just sing, they perform, moving from house to house with the determination of marathon runners and the volume of a brass band. By the third verse of Hark, the herald angels sing. You're beginning to suspect that at least half the choir has been sampling the same pep-enhanced candy that's been circulating the parlor all morning. Their harmonies are a little too enthusiastic, and the tempo is suspiciously brisk. Even the neighborhood dogs have joined in, howling along with gusto. Lunch is less a meal and more an athletic event. There are so many courses you lose track after the third helping of mince pies. Between plates, someone always offers digestive mints or soothing jellies. Helpful, perhaps, but you're beginning to wonder if all these medicinal candies are really necessary or just another excuse to avoid post-lunch drowsiness. Your cousin claims he could chop enough firewood to last until Easter, and you're inclined to believe him. He's already reorganized the coat rack and is now considering shoveling the entire street for fun. By the time the sun sets, the real test of endurance begins. There's charades, more singing, and a round of parlor games that quickly escalates into a competitive sport. Even the grandparents, who normally claim to be delicate, are up and about, telling stories and debating the rules to snapdragons. There's a palpable sense of camaraderie. One part familial love, one part whatever is in those invigorating toffees. As you collapse into bed hours later, your ears still ringing from laughter and song, you realize that Christmas wasn't just a holiday for the Victorians. It was a feat of strength, a test of willpower, and a community-wide effort to outlast the darkness of winter with food, fellowship, and copious quantities of tonic sweets. So, if you ever find yourself exhausted after a modern holiday gathering, remember, Victorian Christmas was not for the faint of heart. And if you suspect the candy is part of the reason, you're absolutely right. In the end, survival is the greatest tradition of all. The fun couldn't last forever. Eventually, some killjoy in government realizes maybe, just maybe, it's not great for children to treat cocaine as a holiday food group. Cue the first awkward regulations, and a lot of disappointed confectioners. The late Victorian era was nothing if not inventive, but even the most enthusiastic sweet makers and their sugar-hyped clientele couldn't outrun the slow march of progress or paperwork. The holidays had turned into a seasonal arms race. Every year, candies became more potent, lozenges more invigorating, and Christmas markets more like a pharmacy's after-hours back room. It was only a matter of time before someone asked, should Timmy really be ice skating on the pond at 3 a.m, reciting the multiplication tables in reverse? Spoiler. Timmy's teacher was the first to raise her hand. The first stirrings of concern came from, of all places, the schools and churches, those pillars of social order with a keen sense for when children were just a little too lively for their own good. Stories spread of holiday parties where not a single child fell asleep in church, and of Christmas pageants featuring angels so energetic they had to be gently tackled off the stage. The local doctor, once the proud dispenser of cheerful tonics, found himself facing awkward questions from parents whose children were inexplicably redecorating the attic after midnight. Even the family dog was running laps around the garden at suspiciously regular intervals. Enter the lawmakers, a panel of very serious men in very tall hats who had, until now, mostly been concerned with taxes and potholes. They started reading the labels, what few existed, consulting medical experts, and listening to horror stories from exhausted parents. It didn't take long for them to discover that invigorating cordials and health lozenges owed much of their success to ingredients you definitely wouldn't find in a modern lunchbox. A few brave souls even sampled the merchandise themselves, presumably the most efficient parliamentary meeting in history. The first attempts at regulation were, as you might imagine, a little clumsy. One law suggested that any confection containing medicinal stimulants be labeled as such, but there was no consensus on what counted as a stimulant. Some argued that anything more exciting than boiled barley should require a prescription. Others, especially the confectioners, protested that such rules would destroy Christmas as everyone knew it. The ensuing debates were passionate, confused, and, if the surviving transcripts are to be believed, occasionally fueled by generous servings of the very candies under discussion. Newspapers joined the fray, printing cartoons of children wide-eyed and bouncing, clutching peppermint sticks labeled patent rocket fuel. Advice columns were suddenly full of warnings about the dangers lurking in holiday treats. Even the peddlers at the Christmas markets, usually immune to social panic, began to hedge their claims. Restorative became refreshing. Invigorating quietly morphed into cheerful, and for the first time, tins of Coca caramels started disappearing from shop fronts. Not because they'd sold out, but because the shopkeeper feared a visit from the new Board of Confectionery oversight. The confectioners themselves mourned the golden age of holiday freedom. Some tried to adapt, offering bland new recipes. All the flavor, none of the fun. While others simply rebranded their wares in the hope that no one would look too closely at the ingredients. There was an uptick in family secret recipes, passed around like contraband, and more than one Christmas gathering featured a whispered trade of the good fudge beneath the dinner table. The transition wasn't instantaneous, nor was it universally popular. Children wrote letters to Santa pleading for the real candy canes, and more than a few grandmothers bemoaned that Christmas just didn't have the same kick. But the writing was on the wall, or at least on the back of the candy tin, now stamped with a government seal. So the next time you hear someone pine for the good old days, remember, even Christmas had to sober up eventually. The sugar rush survived, but the legal hangover was here to stay. And so were the regulations that turned holiday candy from chemical experiment to childhood memory. For the confectioners, it was the end of an era. For everyone else? Well, at least the only thing left to worry about was dental bills and fruitcake. One by one, ingredients lists start to look a little less exciting. Suddenly, pure peppermint is the selling point, and the local pharmacy is just a little bit less festive. Imagine the first Christmas after the great candy cleanup, a holiday marked not by jittery children and overzealous aunts, but by a subtle, almost unsettling calm. The shops that once boasted restorative cordials and invigorating lozenges now push modest, regulation-approved sweets, barley sugar, peppermint sticks, lemon drops, and little else. Gone are the days when a trip to the sweet shop felt like a clandestine pharmaceutical run. Now, it's all innocent fun, with no need to check your pulse after the third caramel. Let's take a stroll through this new world, where candy is just candy. You enter the confectioner's shop, half expecting the usual waft of exotic herbs and mystery extracts, only to be greeted by the straightforward aroma of sugar and mint. Mr. Wiggins, who once prided himself on his tonic toffees, now stands behind the counter offering natural peppermint sticks. No secret ingredients, we promise. The store shelves gleam with purity, the labels as clean and clear as the snow outside. The most exciting claim you'll see is gluten-free or soothing for the throat, which doesn't have quite the same ring as guaranteed to fortify the nerves. Children still dash into the store with holiday glee, but this year the air feels a little less charged. Their stockings are filled with the same old treats, no more elation lozenges or miracle marzipan. Parents, relieved but secretly missing the productivity spike, hand out sweets with a new phrase, everything in moderation. There's an air of nostalgia for the era when candy could get the whole family through a week of snowed-in tedium and at least one failed attempt at Christmas caroling. For the pharmacists and candy makers, the adjustment is bittersweet. Pun absolutely intended. The great candy purge means rewriting recipes, burning old labels, and, For a few, the painful task of explaining to loyal customers why Grandma's famous fudge just isn't the same anymore. Apothecaries are forced to stop selling their best sellers. Medicinal confections become a memory, and with them goes the annual tradition of seeing at least one relative attempt to clean the roof at midnight after a handful of health jellies. Advertisements shift overnight. Where once newspaper pages were plastered with wide-eyed children and promises of festive energy, now the biggest boast is all natural. The cartoon Santas look a bit less wild-eyed, and there's a curious uptick in ads for restful teas and post-holiday digestive aids. The message: Christmas can still be joyful, just maybe not quite so hyperactive. The changes aren't all bad, of course. Doctors are less busy explaining why little Timmy can't sleep until January. Parents discover they actually prefer a quieter, more manageable holiday. Stocking stuffers become a little more uniform and a lot less likely to induce a week-long cleaning spree. There's even time to rediscover old-fashioned traditions, like telling stories around the fire, playing board games, and, yes, actually going to bed at a reasonable hour. But for those who lived through the golden age of medicated confections, there's a sense of loss. Grandmothers sigh over peppermint fudge that just doesn't have the same pep. Uncle Harold keeps searching for the old tin of holiday chews, convinced there's a secret stash somewhere in the attic. Children still get sugar highs, but nobody tries to alphabetize the garden tools or invent a new parlor game at 3 in the morning. The local pharmacist, once the unofficial Santa Claus of the neighborhood, quietly retires his mortar and pestle, replaced by a shiny new cash register and a display of cough drops with actual instructions. By the time January rolls around, the new normal has set in. The holiday memories are still sweet, if a little less surreal. The days of wild experimentation are over. But the tradition of Christmas treats and Christmas chaos remains, just dialed back to a more manageable frequency. So as you bite into your perfectly innocent peppermint stick, raise a toast to the great candy purge, a moment when holiday history took a turn for the responsible, and the wildest ingredient you had to worry about was too much cinnamon. It's not quite the same, but then again, neither are we. And maybe, after all, that's the real holiday miracle. Fast forward to today, where we have sugar highs, caffeine-laced sodas, and a nostalgia for simpler times when the real energy boost came from more than just Red Bull. Picture yourself wandering through a supermarket aisle in December, surrounded by towering displays of holiday sweets, rows of candy canes, marshmallow Santas, and chocolate coins glimmer under fluorescent lights. Everything is cheerfully, meticulously labeled, no secret ingredients, just a dizzying variety of flavors, shapes, and colors. Peppermint, cinnamon, even hot cocoa flavoring. The wildest thing you'll find is a candy cane that tastes vaguely like birthday cake. But something about it all feels a little tame. The commercials play on endless loops, kids giggling over gingerbread houses, parents sharing moments of joy with premium chocolate truffles, and animated elves who never blink. Sugar is still the engine driving the sleigh, but for all the festive packaging, there's an unmistakable sense that we're chasing a high we can never quite recapture. The energy is real, but the magic? Somehow, it's just a little out of reach. Part of it is safety, of course. These days, parents read labels with the intensity of a trial lawyer. Gluten-free, nut-free, no artificial dyes, organic, non-GMO, plant-based if you can spell it. Someone's put it on a sticker. You're more likely to find warnings about choking hazards or dental decay than promises of cheerful energy or miracle moods. The closest we come to a Victorian medicinal treat is a vitamin gummy. Chewy, yes, but unlikely to make you rearrange your garage at midnight. But that doesn't mean we've stopped looking for a boost. The modern candy aisle is an arms race of its own. Energy drinks crowd the shelves just across from the gumdrops, promising maximum focus and unstoppable energy. Coffee-flavored chocolates, caffeinated mints, even gummies that promise a gentle jolt. For adults, there's gourmet chocolate with a hint of espresso and candy bars engineered for sustained release. The spirit of the Victorian candy chemist lives on, just with fewer lawsuits and a lot more FDA oversight. Nostalgia plays its part too. Every holiday season, someone brings out a heritage recipe. Grandma's fudge, the old-fashioned hard candies, the ribbon sweets that look more decorative than edible. There's a longing for that lost era when a piece of candy could light up the entire living room, when the boundaries between treat and tonic were pleasantly blurry and nobody cared what was in the recipe, so long as it got you through the longest night of the year. Social media, of course, has made nostalgia its own cottage industry. Retro candy kits, artisanal peppermint bark, and subscription boxes packed with sweets your great-grandparents might have recognized, minus the extra cheer. TikTokers and YouTubers taste test candy from every era, marveling at how flavors have changed, how textures have softened, how no one's accidentally invented a new energy supplement in their kitchen since 1904. But even as we try to revive the flavors of Christmas past, something fundamental has shifted. The magic is now in the memory, the story, the ritual, the family traditions passed down in faded recipe cards and shaky phone calls from relatives. We gather, we bake, we share, and somewhere between the first sugar cookie and the last marshmallow snowman, we realize it was never really the candy that made the holiday electric. It was the chaos, the laughter, the little bit of anarchy that came from not knowing if your dessert might also help you shovel the driveway faster than your neighbors. So, as you unwrap your next perfectly safe, meticulously labeled, and utterly legal candy cane, savor the sweetness and maybe a little bit of the nostalgia for those wilder, weirder days. Because the real energy of the season was never in the ingredients. It was in the people, the surprises, and the stubborn, hilarious, sometimes over-caffeinated hope that Christmas could always be just a little more magical. Grandparents tell stories about the good old days, carefully skipping the part where their favorite Christmas treat was one small step away from a medical intervention. It's Christmas Eve, and the living room is aglow with twinkle lights, and that unmistakable aura of nostalgia that clings to every December gathering. Grandpa settles into his favorite chair with a mug of cocoa, ready to regale the grandkids with tales of Christmas past. We made do with less, he says. Winters were colder, trees were scrappier, and your biggest thrill was finding an orange in your stocking. If you listen carefully, you'll catch that subtle sleight of hand, the kind that glides right over the more experimental aspects of Victorian holiday cheer. Because for every story about simple joys, there are at least 3 chapters left out. Chapters that feature bonbons laced with coca, barley sugar sticks packed with herbal remedies, and family fudge that could double as a performance-enhancing drug. The truth is, if you were lucky enough to live through a Victorian Christmas, the holidays were just as much about mystery ingredients as they were about family togetherness. But the memory is a friendly liar, sanding off the rough edges and skipping right over the time someone's Aunt Mildred patched the roof at midnight after a generous dose of invigorating marzipan. The selective amnesia is contagious. Grandparents nod wistfully at bowls of modern candy, murmuring, "They just don't make them like they used to." No one questions whether how they used to make them is a good thing. They recall sugar plums, but not the side effects. They wax poetic about taffy pulls in the kitchen, conveniently forgetting that the children were up until 4 a.m. alphabetizing the hymnals. For every mention of simpler times, there's a very deliberate omission of the year Grandpa organized an impromptu neighborhood sled race and didn't sleep until Boxing Day. It's not just the treats themselves that get airbrushed. Listen to the way the old stories turn every holiday mishap into a folksy adventure. Why, we kids never sat still, Grandpa brags. We ran circles around the parlor, built snow forts, and sang carols all night. What he doesn't mention, half of that energy came straight from the apothecary shelf, not from wholesome winter air. If you pressed for details, you might learn that caroling all night was less about Christmas spirit and more about the aftermath of a handful of cheerful lozenges. Parents play along, happy to leave the past in a haze of soft focus and peppermint. When the grandkids ask, "What was your favorite Christmas candy?" they hear about fudge, not miracle fudge. Peppermint sticks, not the ones laced with something that would now get you a stern talking to from the FDA. Barley, sugar, not invigorating barley sugar. The nostalgia is as sweet and selective as the treats themselves. But every now and then, a sliver of honesty slips through. Maybe it's after a second glass of wine, or in the punchline of an old joke. Did you ever wonder why everyone used to knit so fast? Or why the cat spent Christmas on the roof? The room chuckles, the details blur, and the story slides back into the usual groove. Some memories are just too lively for bedtime. Still, you can't blame anyone for editing the past. Nostalgia is a team effort, an agreed-upon myth that lets us believe the best of the people and seasons that shape us. We cherry-pick the magic, gloss over the rest, and make a kind of peace with the wild improvisations of our ancestors. It's comforting to imagine the holidays as simple and pure, even if we know, deep down, that our predecessors were just as prone to chaos, excess, and questionable decisions as we are now. So the next time Grandpa sighs about the good old days, just nod and pass him another harmless, regulation-approved candy cane. The best holiday stories are the ones we tell together, half fact, half fantasy, and all the sweeter for the bits we forget on purpose. Urban legends abound. Did Great-Grandma's fudge really have a little something in it? Was Uncle Al's famous Christmas party the result of too much fruit punch? Or was it the holiday lozenges again? Let's slip into the after-dinner haze of a family Christmas gathering, where the stories get taller with every passing minute and the candy dish gets mysteriously lighter. There's always an aunt or uncle who swears they remember the Christmas when the whole block stayed up until sunrise just from the excitement, and conveniently forgets to mention that the fudge came straight from a recipe card marked "Doctors Only." In every family, the line between festive fiction and confectionery fact is a little blurry. A blend of nostalgia, wishful thinking, and just enough truth to keep the legend alive. Start with the fudge. Every branch of the family tree has a matriarch whose secret recipe is revered, whose fudge is unbeatable, whose taffy kept the kids busy for days. But behind every tray of impossibly creamy squares is the whispered suggestion that maybe, just maybe, there was more in the mixing bowl than sugar and cocoa. A pinch of this, a dash of that, Great-Grandma would say with a twinkle in her eye, carefully avoiding further questions. The adults winked, the children wondered, and the recipe card quietly changed hands with only the most trusted heirs. Years later, someone would try to replicate it with supermarket ingredients and wonder why it just didn't have the same effect. Then there are the stories of infamous holiday parties, like Uncle Al's. The one where the carols didn't stop until the sun came up and 3 people volunteered to paint the cellar before breakfast. Was it the mulled wine, or was it the energy drops that got passed around after dessert? No one can say for sure, and everyone has a different version. One cousin claims it was all in the fruit punch, but there's an old family photo of Uncle Al grinning like he just won the lottery, clutching a tin labeled Dr. Merriweather's invigorating lozenges. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe it was the Christmas candy equivalent of rocket fuel. Of course, with every year that passes, the stories get more outrageous. There's the legend of the time little Jenny recited a visit from Street Nicholas, backward after 3 cheering toffees, or the claim that Grandpa once shoveled the entire street at midnight, then built a snowman army, and then tried to patent the snow shovel hat. In all these tales, the candy dish is always close by, innocent in appearance, deeply suspicious in effect. The details shift, the facts get fuzzy, but the core remains. In this family, holiday sweets pack a punch. Inevitably, someone at the table tries to fact-check the legends. There's no way, says the voice of reason, that Christmas fudge could have had anything funny in it. Grandma would never. Yet, a little digging in the family archives, or a stray recipe written in suspiciously careful handwriting, turns up references to tonic drops, medicated syrup, or the telltale phrase, add 1 drachm, as advised by the chemist. Suddenly, the wild tales don't seem so far-fetched. The truth is, the Victorians were masters at blurring the line between health and happiness, treat and tonic. For them, a little pep in the Christmas candy was just smart holiday planning. Something to get everyone through the winter gloom and leave a few stories for the next generation. The myth became the memory became the tradition, and the tradition became a great excuse to pass the candy bowl one more time. So next time you hear a story that sounds too wild to be true, a sugar-fueled sled race, a caroling marathon, a fudge recipe lost to history, don't be too quick to doubt. Sometimes, fact and confection are closer than you think, and the sweetest myths are the ones that stick around long after the last wrapper is gone. Imagine handing a 19th century candy cane to a modern child. After one lick, they'd probably ask where the Wi-Fi is, not why they suddenly want to alphabetize the wallpaper. Let's perform a little time travel experiment. One that doesn't require a flux capacitor, just a peppermint stick and a willing participant. You unwrap an authentic Victorian-era candy cane. Beautifully striped, hard as a walking stick, and laced with ingredients that are, frankly, illegal in at least 14 countries today. Across from you sits your average 21st century kid, tablet in hand, wearing fuzzy socks and skeptical about anything that can't be streamed or shared. The swap happens. There's a skeptical sniff, a tentative lick, and then a moment of confusion. It's peppermint, sure, but it's also something else. Something that feels like a tiny tap-dancing elf just took up residence behind their eyeballs. The child's eyes widen, their toes start tapping, and suddenly they're overcome by the strangest urge to organize the bookshelf, color-code the ornaments, and ask, unprompted, if anyone would like help folding the laundry. This is not your average holiday sugar rush. It's more like a jump-start for the soul. A turbocharged jolt that would leave most modern energy drinks in the dust. The Victorians, it turns out, had a different idea of treat. Their candy was more than a snack. It was an experience. It promised not only flavor, but fortitude. You'd be hard-pressed to find a 19th century child who could sit still long enough to be bored, let alone complain about screen time limits. Of course, the cultural chasm goes both ways. Imagine a Victorian child tasting a modern, natural, organic, peppermint-flavored candy cane. They'd wonder why it's so soft, so sweet, so uneventful. No surprise. Ingredient, no secret aftertaste, no subtle hint of adventure. Just sugar and mint. And the gentle realization that this treat is safe enough to eat and boring enough to leave you focused on Christmas carols rather than cataloguing the cutlery. This is where the real culture shock kicks in. Modern parents, armed with Google and decades of nutritional advice, look for clean labels, no artificial colors, and kid-friendly on every package. Victorian parents, meanwhile, were more likely to ask, "Will this keep everyone cheerful until 12th night? A little bit of coca extract. If it helps little Tommy stay awake through the midnight service and finish his Latin homework, then yes, please, and thank you." In truth, it's not just about the candy, it's about expectations, and the way every generation draws the line between fun and danger, treat and trouble. To the Victorians, the holiday season was about more than indulgence. It was about survival. The nights were long, the winters hard, and any excuse to make life brighter, busier, or a little more unpredictable was embraced wholeheartedly. If that meant candy with a kick, so be it. Modern kids, on the other hand, are offered a holiday experience wrapped in caution tape. Don't eat too much. Brush your teeth. No sweets before bed. Their Christmases are meticulously managed for maximum comfort and minimum chaos. The wildest thing in their stocking is usually a tiny packet of Pop Rocks or a chocolate shaped like a snowman. But maybe, just maybe, both worlds have something to offer. The Victorians gave us the joy of surprise, of not quite knowing what was in the treat, but trusting that, somehow, it would keep the party going. Today, we get peace of mind and, let's be honest, a lot fewer midnight roof repairs. So if you ever want to give your family a real taste of history, serve up a story with that candy cane. Let them know that once upon a time, holiday treats were as unpredictable as Christmas weather. And maybe, after all the laughter and raised eyebrows, the only thing anyone will want to organize is a second round of dessert. By the mid-20th century, confectioners are desperate to rebrand. Now with 100% less narcotics, is not a slogan that ever caught on, but it probably should have. Let's fast forward through the sepia-toned chaos of Victorian Christmas and land somewhere around 1954, where the world is humming with optimism, radio jingles, and a very different idea of what makes candy special. Gone are the days when your average peppermint stick could double as a mood enhancer. Now, confectioners have a PR problem and a lot of explaining to do. For decades, the candy industry thrived on the fine print. If there was any fine print at all, medicated sweets, restorative lozenges, invigorating chews, the less you asked about the secret ingredient, the better. But as regulations grew stricter and ingredient lists moved out of the shadows and onto the packaging, the big candy companies faced an existential crisis. What do you do when the very thing that made your product famous is now the reason for a midnight recall? The first step was denial. "We have always focused on flavor, never on fortification," declared one candy company spokesman, adjusting his bow tie and sweating through his collar. But when the rumors wouldn't go away, the next move was to pivot. Hard. Candy needed to be safe, wholesome, and above all, family-friendly. The boardrooms of old candy giants echoed with slogans that almost made the cut. Sweets for treats, not for feats, and no more surprises, just delight. Some poor intern even floated narcotic-free since '53, before being swiftly reassigned to the jelly bean division. Suddenly, the marketing images shifted. No more wild-eyed children bouncing off the walls or energetic grandmas shoveling snow at midnight. Out with the patent medicine fonts, and in with smiling cartoon mascots and soft pastels. Candy was about joy, nostalgia, and safe indulgence, a treat to be shared, not a mystery to be solved. Pure ingredients, natural flavors, and classic recipes became the buzzwords of the day. It wasn't always an easy transition. Some old-timers grumbled that candy just didn't have the same pep. Sales reps now had to sell chocolate bars on taste alone, not on the vague promise of conquering the afternoon slump. And while sugar was still king, the recipes were cleaner, the claims more modest, and the holiday cheer slightly less animated. There was even a brief, earnest campaign to sell hard candies as a healthier alternative to cake, but the public had already moved on to scrutinizing sodium content and worrying about cavities. Still, a few brave or stubborn candy makers found ways to reinvent themselves without completely abandoning their wild roots. Retro branding made a quiet comeback. Red and white striped tins, vintage wrappers, and old-fashioned recipes became shorthand for authenticity, not scandal. Candy shops began selling nostalgia, promising just like Grandma used to make, minus the ingredients you'd need a prescription for. You couldn't put coca leaf in a lollipop anymore, but you could sell the idea that you'd recaptured the magic, minus the midnight roof repairs. Behind closed doors, of course, the industry had its regrets. Some wondered if maybe they'd gone too far in purifying the product. The stories of energetic Christmases past grew wilder with every retelling. Grandchildren listened wide-eyed as Grandpa explained the difference between a proper fudge and the tame, modern version, always careful to leave out the punchline that involved the family's brief foray into competitive wallpapering. So the candy maker's redemption arc was, in the end, a triumph of reinvention. They traded in their snake oil for saccharin, their herbal fortitude for fun, and learned that sometimes the best holiday gift is just a little sweetness, shared in good company. The packaging might be brighter, the claims tamer, but somewhere in every tin of old-fashioned candy, there's a whisper of those wilder days, now safely locked behind the label. In today's world, your biggest Christmas candy worry is how many miles you'll have to walk to burn off one marshmallow Santa. No surprise ingredients, just guilt and maybe a touch of nostalgia. Let's take a stroll through the modern Christmas landscape. A place where the only thing more abundant than twinkle lights is nutritional advice. You wander into a holiday party armed with a box of store-bought chocolates, and the knowledge that you've already read 3 articles this week about how even one serving of peppermint bark can derail your January. The once thrilling mysteries of Christmas candy have been replaced by a deep, abiding awareness of caloric reality. It's not the fudge that's keeping you up at night, it's the Fitbit. Everywhere you look, candy has lost its edge. There are no secrets lurking behind the shiny wrappers, just plain old sugar, maybe a dash of high fructose corn syrup, and a heavy dose of personal responsibility. The wildest confection in the bowl is a sour gummy, and even that comes with a reminder to brush thoroughly and floss. No child is about to reorganize the living room on a sugar high that lasts until Valentine's Day. The most daring thing that happens after dessert is a heated debate over who ate the last mini peanut butter cup. Gone are the days of invigorating fudge and medicated lozenges. Today, everything is gluten-free, allergen-labeled, and approved by a small army of nutritionists. The most rebellious move you can make is to sneak a second candy cane before dinner, preferably when nobody's watching. Parents police the candy bowl with an intensity usually reserved for Black Friday sales. No more until after dinner. That's your last one. We're saving some for the neighbors. It's a world where the greatest threat to holiday cheer is the sugar crash, where the only thing stronger than the peppermint is the lingering sense of guilt. The nostalgia, though, is real and persistent. Every commercial, every pop-up bakery, every limited edition seasonal flavor is carefully designed to remind you of holidays past. Just like Grandma made, the package promises, though nobody's grandma was counting carbs when she whipped up that double batch of peanut brittle. We look at the old family photos, wild-eyed children, over-decorated trees, mountains of fudge, and everyone smiling without a care for their glycemic index. The memories are sweet, even if the actual candy is not what it used to be. And let's be honest, modern Christmas isn't completely joyless. There's still a thrill in opening a new box of chocolates, or discovering a peppermint marshmallow shaped like a snowman. We might not get a side of chemical courage with our stocking stuffers, but we do get a different kind of excitement, a collective, low-stakes guilt trip shared across the living room as everyone pretends not to count wrappers. You're not hiding a candy habit from the government. You're hiding it from your step-counting app and your spouse. Of course, all this shame comes with a silver lining. You're a lot less likely to find yourself fixing the roof at midnight or alphabetizing the pantry with inexplicable vigor. You're also less likely to need a second mortgage for a dental emergency or have to explain to the neighbors why your Christmas caroling included an impromptu sprint relay. Modern candy might be a little less magical. It's also a lot safer. So, as you unwrap your next guilt-free, regulation-approved, modern holiday treat, remember, Christmas is still Christmas, even if the wildest thing in your stocking is a chocolate truffle with 30% less sugar. Maybe this year, the greatest indulgence is letting yourself enjoy it. Shame and all. After all, a little nostalgia goes a long way, and no one has ever had to call the fire brigade because they ate too many marshmallow Santas. Yet, as you drift off, picture a Christmas table piled high with treats, relatives nervously eyeing the dessert tray, and a chorus of carolers who definitely don't need any more encouragement. Merry Christmas, and sleep tight, but maybe hide the candy canes just in case. Let's linger in this midnight glow for just a moment longer, where the only thing sweeter than the treats is the memory of chaos past. Every family has their own rituals. The oddball uncle who always brings special fruitcake, the cousin who turns every game of charades into performance art, and the kids who get more frosting on the dog than on the cookies. But in the golden days of Christmas confectionery, the dessert table wasn't just a backdrop, it was the main event. The quiet saboteur behind every unexpected burst of holiday energy. Close your eyes and imagine it. Bowls of jewel, toned candies, sticky marzipan, peppermint sticks standing like festive sentries, and fudge that could, in the right dosage, turn a gentle winter gathering into a three-ring circus. There's Grandma, feigning innocence as she slices her infamous holiday taffy, and Grandpa, reminiscing about the year he ate 3 medicated caramels and spent the evening trying to conduct the neighbor's cat choir. You start to see the pattern. The desserts are more than a treat. They're tradition, performance, and, occasionally, just a little bit of chemical adventure. Around the table, everyone has their candy story. Aunt Edith swears she once saw Uncle George alphabetize the Christmas cards by language. The children whisper legends about the mysterious pep fudge that made last year's snowball fight last until midnight. Even the family dog seems to recall the time he got into the marzipan and was found blissfully napping on the piano bench, wearing a Santa hat and snoring to the tune of Deck the Halls. But the true magic of the wildest Christmas isn't just the ingredients, the sugar rushes, or even the questionably legal recipes. It's what those moments did for families. The too lively caroling, the spontaneous parlor games, the neighbors poking their heads in to see what all the racket was about. It was messy, unpredictable, and more than a little exhausting. Yet it was also a reminder that for all our differences, the holidays have a strange power to bring us together in a shared bout of collective absurdity. If you're lucky, your own Christmas will have a little bit of that wildness. A burned batch of cookies, a disastrous family photo, a child who climbs into the tree just to see the view. Maybe your treats are tamer these days, and maybe nobody's going to end up retiling the roof at 2 a.m. But there's still that sense of possibility that hovers over the dessert table. What will happen this year? Who will tell the best story, bake the best fudge, or finally, admit to sneaking that last candy cane? So, as you drift towards sleep, let the sound of distant carolers fade, the glow of twinkling lights blur, and the lingering sweetness of holiday treats wrap you up. Toast the wildest Christmases, yours, your grandparents', and the Victorians', and be grateful for every disaster, every laugh, and every unrepeatable moment of unbridled holiday joy. And if you wake up in the night, tiptoe to the kitchen, and spot a lone candy cane glinting in the moonlight, maybe, just maybe, let yourself remember those wild nights when anything was possible. Merry Christmas, sleep tight, and don't be afraid to dream of the most riotous, hilarious, candy-fueled festivities history ever knew. Hide the candy canes or don't. After all, some traditions are too much fun to keep under wraps. It's the annual workplace gathering, Victorian edition. Someone brings in a box of festive sweets borrowed from the apothecary. Within minutes, accounting is speed filing. Receipts? Marketing is pitching jingles at 400 words per minute. And Bob from logistics is single-handedly erecting a pine tree in the break room. The manager considers banning medicated treats next year. But then again, it's the most productive December on record. Picture the scene. Flickering gaslights, desks cleared of ledgers, the faint sound of carolers drifting in through frosted windows, and the unmistakable aroma of peppermint, marzipan, and something with a decidedly pharmaceutical edge. Victorian workplaces aren't known for their comfort. But once a year, everyone gathers for an attempt at forced cheer and awkward games. Plus the unofficial contest of who brought the best sweets. This year, there's a twist. Mild-mannered Edith from accounts has slipped in a box of Dr. Lively's invigorating bonbons alongside the usual mince pies and biscuits. Within moments, you can practically feel the office's energy level rise. The normally sedate bookkeeper is tapping his foot at a suspicious speed, and the junior clerk is giggling her way through the secret Santa exchange, oblivious to the fact that her gift is just last year's calendar, repackaged. The real spectacle begins when the treats start to disappear. Accounting, usually a sea of sighs and ink-stained fingers, transforms into a whirlwind of activity. Numbers are crunched, ledgers balanced, and someone invents a new filing system before lunch. The speed and accuracy with which invoices are processed border on miraculous. Even the office mouse seems to be running laps at double speed, perhaps after nibbling a stray health drop under the table. Marketing is next. Inspired by a half-dozen stimulating fudge cubes, the team launches into an impromptu brainstorm that produces jingles for products no one has even invented yet. There are rhymes, puns, and, inevitably, a round of festive limericks that the HR department will need to quietly collect by the end of the week. Half the staff insists they're ready for a group sing-along. The other half is too busy coding the supply cupboard to notice. Meanwhile, Bob from logistics, already known for his questionable choices, takes things to another level. Fueled by a handful of energetic barley twists, he commandeers the potted plants, the coat rack, and a collection of shipping crates, and manages to assemble a pine tree in the middle of the break room. He strings it with twine, ledger paper, and whatever else he can find. By the time management returns from their lunch meeting, they discover a fully decorated tree, 3 new seating areas, and Bob scaling a ladder to adjust the makeshift star, made from bent rulers and a lot of hope. The office manager, initially horrified, quickly reconsiders. Productivity is up, morale is higher than it's been since last Christmas, and no one has argued about the annual bonus in hours. There's talk of an official ban on apothecary treats next year, but privately, she's calculating just how much fudge will be needed to power the year-end reports. As the day turns to evening, things inevitably unravel. The sugar and stimulants wear off, and employees begin drifting into collective stupor. The finance team, now exhausted, collapses on a pile of shipping manifests. Marketing loses interest in jingles and resorts to arm wrestling over the last fruitcake. Bob, coming down from his tree-erecting high, quietly dozes off behind the punch bowl, clutching a piece of marzipan and snoring to the rhythm of God, "Rest ye merry gentlemen." Still, as you gather your things and head out into the chilly night, you have to admit, this is one office party you'll never forget. The tree might be a fire hazard, the HR files may contain some incriminating poetry, and next week will probably bring a stern memo about responsible snacking. But for one wild, ridiculous afternoon, work actually felt like a party. And really, isn't that what the holidays are for? So next time, your own office holiday party starts to lag, just imagine what a Victorian apothecary's contribution might do for your quarterly numbers, or, at the very least, your company's story collection. Your sweet old grandmother hands you a handwritten recipe card that's been passed down for generations. Step 1. Sugar. Step 2. A pinch of white powder. Ask Dr. Hewitt for the good stuff. Suddenly, you realize why her Christmas fudge was legendary at the parish, but also why she's no longer allowed within 50 yards of the church kitchen. Let's step into Grandma's kitchen, where the linoleum is cracked, the kettle is always boiling, and the air is thick with secrets and the scent of bubbling chocolate. You've heard whispers about her fudge for years. Parishioners would swap stories. You must try Mabel's Christmas fudge, one bite, and you'll have the choir loft painted before noon. The more cautious would simply raise an eyebrow and mutter something about peculiar energy, levels, and bake sales gone wild. But you, her favorite grandchild, have finally been entrusted with the sacred slip of paper, the secret weapon behind every legendary holiday gathering. The ingredients look simple enough at first: sugar, condensed milk, a generous dollop of butter, a dash of cocoa, and... wait, what's this? A cryptic note to ask Dr. Hewitt for the good stuff. You glance up at Grandma, who just smiles that mysterious, innocent smile that says, "Of course, I have a direct line to the town apothecary." In her day, a woman had to be resourceful. And if that meant picking up a little extra cheer with her cough syrup, so be it. As you roll up your sleeves and start mixing, Grandma leans in, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "Now, don't be shy with the special ingredient," she advises. "A little goes a long way, but a little more goes a lot further." You can't help but wonder just how many other special recipes she's been sitting on. You stir, you pour, you wait, and as the fudge sets, the kitchen fills with a heady aroma, sweet, yes, but also strangely invigorating. It's only after the first taste that you begin to appreciate the true power of Grandma's fudge. Suddenly, you're overcome with the urge to organize the spice cabinet, deep clean the fridge, and finally write those thank you notes from last year. Your hands are steady, your mind is sharp, and you're starting to see why parish events ran on schedule when Grandma was in charge of refreshments. Her pick-me-up was the backbone of every bake sale, charity drive, and choir rehearsal. Until, of course, someone asked too many questions. Rumor has it, things came to a head at the fateful Winter Jubilee. The fudge disappeared in minutes. The bell choir played the fastest rendition of Silent Night anyone had ever heard. The vicar finished his sermon in record time and then insisted on repainting the vestry. Little Edith Watson sold more raffle tickets than there were people in the parish. By the time the head of the bake sale committee realized the fudge had been fortified, it was too late. Grandma was quietly, lovingly, asked never to return with her fudge or with her legendary energy loaf. Still, the legend endures. Parishioners reminisce, sometimes wistfully, sometimes with a wary side-eye, about the time when bake sales were the social event of the season and everyone left with a project to start. Grandma, for her part, is unrepentant. She keeps baking, now just for family, with slightly less oomph in her fudge, though every so often a suspiciously lively batch appears and nobody asks too many questions. You tuck the recipe card away, now part of an unbroken chain of family history. It's a reminder that in the great tapestry of holiday traditions, there's always a wild card, a bit of extra spice, and a grandparent willing to bend the rules for the sake of a good story. As you sneak another bite, you finally understand why Grandma is both beloved and politely banned from church kitchens everywhere. So here's to Grandma and her secret recipe, the source of untold holiday productivity, local legend, and just a dash of mischief in every bite. And maybe, if you're brave enough, to carrying on the tradition, at least for family gatherings, you're at a Victorian spa, which is mostly a drafty room, a bucket of hot water, and a tray of relaxation candies. The label promises serenity, but after two, you're contemplating a brisk jog to Paris and back. Victorian relaxation. Less meditation, more accidental marathon. Let's step into that spa. Forget candlelight and soothing whale song. The only sound is the echo of footsteps on cold tile, and the occasional cough from the proprietor, who doubles as your wellness advisor. Your spa treatment is a lumpy chaise by the window, a dubious herbal poultice, and, best of all, a silver tray stacked high with Dr. Purwell's calming confections. The sign claims they settle the mind and lift the Luxlar spirits. What it doesn't mention is that the spirits are lifted, spun around the room, and launched into next Tuesday. You eye the tray, thinking perhaps a sweet might help you relax while you soak your feet. The first one tastes like peppermint and lavender, with a faint medicinal tang that hints at a recipe straight out of the apothecary's wildest dreams. By the time you've finished your second, your shoulders do feel lighter, but now your fingers are tapping out a waltz on the armrest, and you're considering whether you might, in fact, be able to reorganize the spa's entire towel collection before your water gets cold. Across the room, other spa-goers are having a similar experience. One gentleman, who came in complaining of holiday weariness, is suddenly describing, in detail, his plans to repaint the nursery and finish all of his correspondence by nightfall. A lady who'd hoped to nap quietly is now vigorously planning her spring garden, her pencil racing furiously across the back of her pamphlet. The effect of these so-called relaxation candies is not so much a tranquil river of calm as a bubbling geyser of possibility. Victorian relaxation, it turns out, is just productivity with a fancy name. The spa staff don't seem to mind the transformation. After all, the more energetic the clientele, the quicker the rooms turn over. It's good for business, and who wouldn't want a reputation for producing the most invigorated, fastest knitting spa-goers in town? If anyone asks about the recipe for Dr. Purwell's confections, the staff just wink and say it's a proprietary blend of herbs and restorative elements. Never mind the fact that half those elements are now heavily regulated, if not outright illegal. As the treatment continues, you realize there's a reason why Victorian spas didn't offer meditation classes or yoga retreats. It's hard to sit quietly and breathe deeply when your mind is running sprints and your toes are itching to dance. By mid-afternoon, the waiting room is abuzz with energy. Someone is rearranging the magazines by date, another is composing a holiday hymn, and a third is offering to scrub the floorboards if they can just borrow a brush and a refreshing barley drop. When it's time to leave, you feel not exactly rested, but certainly accomplished. You've written half your Christmas cards, replanned your week, and volunteered to host the next bake sale. The relaxation has manifested in the kind of nervous energy modern folks would associate with too much cold brew. Not a day at the spa. As you step out into the frosty street, you can't help but marvel at the Victorian philosophy of leisure. Why meditate when you can get everything done twice and have time to polish the doorknobs? Of course, you'll tell your friends you felt refreshed and utterly serene. You might even recommend the spa, though perhaps with a warning to avoid the third candy on the tray unless they want to alphabetize their sock drawer at midnight. So the next time you're tempted to romanticize the self-care rituals of the past, just remember, for the Victorians, relaxing was just another word for getting stuff done at top speed. And maybe, if your modern spa day feels a little too restful, you'll long for the kind of holiday treat that leaves you calm, collected, and, if you're lucky, ready to jog to Paris and back. Picture this. It's Christmas Eve, and instead of quietly sipping cocoa, you and the entire family are up until 4 a.m., organizing the attic, rewriting the family budget, and repainting the barn. Next door, the neighbors are doing jumping jacks on the lawn. Nobody sleeps, but at least the holiday chores are done for the next 5 years. Let's rewind to a Victorian December, when the line between holiday magic and seasonal mania was thinner than the icing on the Christmas cake. You arrive at what you think will be a peaceful evening. Crackling fire, gentle carols, maybe a sneaky mince pie before bed. Instead, you're greeted by the sound of scraping chairs, shuffling boxes, and the unmistakable scent of both peppermint and fresh paint. Your aunt, still wearing her apron, is dusting the chandelier with one hand and recalculating the family's grain inventory with the other. The only thing missing from this scene is any sign of actual rest. The culprit, of course, is the festive dessert tray, heaving with energizing sweets, invigorating fudge, and revitalizing lozenges. These aren't your everyday treats. They're the legacy of an era where no one questioned why a holiday bonbon might also double as a productivity tool. The adults, eager to impress their in-laws and finally get ahead of the endless to-do list, help themselves to seconds and thirds of Aunt Mildred's special taffy, not realizing they're about to experience a Christmas miracle of the most hyperactive kind. The children, sensing the electric mood, leap into action. Cousin Edgar volunteers to organize the attic, a task he's avoided since the great toy box avalanche of '89. Within an hour, he's alphabetized the board games, inventoried the family heirlooms, and constructed a fortress of solitude out of moth-eaten trunks. His sister Lila is downstairs, carefully balancing the household budget, muttering about hidden efficiencies and seasonal depreciation. Meanwhile, the youngest cousins have taken over the kitchen, repainting the cabinets in what can only be described as a peppermint-fueled frenzy of questionable color choices. The real spectacle, though, is outside. The neighbors, never ones to be outdone, have clearly been sampling their own energizing cordials. One household has initiated a midnight round of calisthenics, marching up and down the lane in their pajamas and woolen slippers, singing "God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen" at a tempo that would make a marching band blush. Another neighbor, inspired by the ruckus, has decided that 3:30 a.m. is the perfect time to rearrange the garden gnomes. By sunrise, the entire street is transformed, the collective output of a community running on Christmas spirit and just a touch of 19th century chemistry. As the clock ticks past 3, you take stock. The barn is freshly painted. The silver is polished. The bookshelves gleam. And for the first time in living memory, the attic is navigable without risking an avalanche. Even the family dog, usually sound asleep by the fire, is helping by enthusiastically rearranging the slippers and barking encouragement. No one is yawning, no one is complaining, and no one is remotely interested in bed. Of course, the inevitable crash awaits. As dawn breaks and the adrenaline finally wears off, the entire family collapses into a heap, some on the couches, others on piles of folded laundry, and a few still clutching lists of newly completed chores. Breakfast is a subdued affair, with groggy faces, half-hearted attempts at conversation, and more than one family member quietly questioning the wisdom of just one more invigorating sweet. The story of the Christmas Eve all-nighter will live on in family legend. Remember the year we redecorated the whole house before sunrise? Someone will say, and everyone will laugh, conveniently forgetting just how wired they all were. The lesson, of course, is that holiday magic sometimes comes with a secret ingredient or two. And maybe, just maybe, it's better to stick to cocoa and a single cookie before bed. So if your own family gathering ever veers into late-night productivity territory, don't be too alarmed. You're in good company. Just count your blessings, finish your chores, and promise yourself that next Christmas you'll embrace a little more sleep and a little less sugar-fueled ambition, or at least hide the fudge after midnight. 1 year, the candies change. There's no extra zing, no sudden urge to alphabetize the hymnals or invent the electric train. Parents murmur about a loss of tradition. Children yawn at caroling. The only explanation? The secret ingredient is gone, and so is the era when Christmas magic meant something you had to declare at customs. It's a subtle shift at first. You show up to the annual family gathering, expecting the usual flurry of energy, the raucous laughter, the suspiciously speedy cleanup after dinner. The dessert table is piled high with the same old favorites: peppermint bark, fudge, toffee, but something is off. There's a new label on the tins: all natural, no artificial additives, simple ingredients. Gone are the winks and nudges from the older relatives, the whispered, "Try the third tray from the left, that one will keep you up until Epiphany." The first sign of trouble comes during caroling. In previous years, the living room would erupt into a chorus so enthusiastic you could practically see the paint peel from the walls. But tonight, the singing is subdued. Half the children lose interest by the second verse. Aunt Ethel quietly excuses herself to check on the tea, and Grandpa, instead of leading the high notes, is gently dozing in the armchair. It's not just the melodies that are missing their spark. It's the very spirit of the season. The parents notice too. Remember when the kids used to build entire snow forts before breakfast? Someone whispers, eyeing the listless pile of cousins on the couch, all halfway through a single game of cards. What happened to the year Lila knitted 12 scarves before sunrise? The consensus emerges slowly, over lukewarm mulled wine and a bowl of perfectly ordinary toffees. The candy isn't what it used to be. Theories abound. Some blame the new regulations, others the modern obsession with health, and a few insist it's the rise of screen time and the decline of good, old-fashioned chaos. But you know the truth, the wild ingredient that once fueled these holiday marathons has vanished. No more medicated lozenges, no more fortified fudge. The Christmas magic that once powered the family through nights of board games, marathon snowball fights, and impromptu attic cleanings is gone. Children in particular seem perplexed. Instead of the usual post-dessert whirl, they sit quietly, poking at their gingerbread men. "I feel sleepy," admits one, as if discovering a brand new emotion. There are no spontaneous puppet shows, no attempts to rewrite the carol lyrics, no sudden urge to organize the cutlery drawer. The older kids mumble about the good old days, which now seem to mean last Christmas. Meanwhile, the adults find themselves with unexpected free time and a strange longing for the chaos they used to bemoan. Dad sips his cocoa, wondering why the living room feels so tidy. Mom reads a magazine in peace, only half listening for the crash of ornament or the distant sound of an attic reorganization project. They both pretend to enjoy the calm, but there's a pang of loss, an ache for the spirited messiness that once defined the holidays. By midnight, the difference is undeniable. No one is still up cleaning the pantry or plotting to repaint the garden shed. There's a hush over the house. The only sound, the gentle snoring of relatives who've finally surrendered to a reasonable bedtime. The candies on the dessert table remain, barely touched. A quiet, colorful reminder that, once upon a time, these sweets were the engines of the season. In the days that follow, a new kind of nostalgia settles over the family. The stories get told. Remember the year we rearranged the entire house before sunrise? Whatever happened to Grandma's special fudge? But they now sound less like warnings and more like legends. The wild holiday spirit has faded into memory, replaced by a calmer, more manageable celebration. So, if you ever feel that something's missing from your modern Christmas, the spark, the energy, the inexplicable urge to knit socks for every relative, remember the mysterious disappearance of the holiday spirit. Maybe it's just the sugar crash. Maybe it's the new ingredient list. Or maybe it's a gentle nudge from history to cherish the quiet moments too. Because sometimes the best traditions are the ones that make you laugh, even after the secret ingredient is long gone. So here we are, at the end of a long, strange sleigh ride through history's most questionable holiday tradition. You've witnessed the rise and fall of Christmas candy that could outpace an espresso shot, outshine Grandma's brandy fruitcake, and probably power an entire neighborhood light display without breaking a sweat. You've traveled through Victorian parlor rooms humming with suspicious energy, markets that doubled as open-air pharmacies, and family gatherings where the holiday spirit was less silent night and more midnight rave. It's easy to laugh at the past. At a time when invigorating confections were handed out to kids with a wink and a prayer, and the biggest concern was whether your peppermint stick would cure a cold or just help you reorganize